Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it so much. Good evening. I will now call the April 14, 2026 meeting of the Ben Lapine Board of Directors to order. I would like to introduce our participants this evening. To my immediate left, Vice Chair Amy Tatum, Directors Cameron Fisher, Keena Chadwick, Jen Lynch, and Shirley Olson. To my immediate right, Acting Superintendent Dr. Lisa Burke, No, Mary? Okay, I got you. Board Clerk Janet Bojanowski, and I'm Marks LeGrand, Chair of the Board. We also have student representatives joining us this evening. Essie, you made it, I see. Essie Volts from Summit High School, and Sam Brooksbank. Are you from Summit as well? Caldera High School. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it very, very much.
Students, just a reminder, make sure you turn your microphones on when you're speaking. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much. In order to ensure safety and ability for the board to focus on business, we ask that all the audience adhere to the board meeting attendee expectations. This includes being seated and holding signs under chin level. If any, no available seating, individuals will wait in the lobby until one is available. And thank you for that. We appreciate it very much. And now everyone please rise, and gentlemen, move your caps and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will now move to agenda item number 3, review of the agenda. Dr. Burke, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Fellow board members, are there any changes to the agenda?
I move to add the Mountain Laurel Lodge exemption back on, or to the agenda.
Okay. Okay. Board member has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Okay, I have a second on the motion. Now I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we'll be adding that to the agenda. Okay.
Can you please make note of where that will fall on the agenda?
Most definitely. And that was the next thing I was going to ask. Board, are we going to do this for consent information? Excuse me. Where are we going to place that in the agenda?
May I recommend that it comes as agenda item 11B?
Thank you for that recommendation. How's that sound, directors? That sounds great. Thank you, Board Clerk Janet Bojanowski. I appreciate it very, very much. All right. And now I will turn it over to Dr. Burke for our district recognitions. Thank you.
All right, I am honored to present the Champion for Students Award to a valued member of the Silver Rail Elementary community, Educational Assistant Doug Hermanson. Mr. Doug, as he's known to students, couldn't join us today, but we'd like to share a video from the day Dr. Cook surprised him at school.
You guys mind if I interrupt?
That's okay.
I'm Steve Cook. I'm from the district office. I'm the superintendent. And we are here because we are very excited to give Mr. Doug an award. Can you help me cheer him on? Mr. Doug, in recognition of your commitment to the Silver Rail Elementary School community as an educational assistant, your genuine care for students shines through your consistent encouragement and steady support that builds confidence and trust in our students. Students feel safe, they feel seen, and they feel motivated in your presence. Through outstanding instructional support with an infectious positive attitude, you foster relationships that help students and staff both feel supported and valued. Your openness and ability to uplift everyone around you creates a lasting impact on the entire school community. Congratulations.
Okay, we have another recognition today, the Athletics and Activities Secretary at Caldera High School, who makes a huge impact throughout the entire community, Darcy Michaud. Come on up. Hello. All right, Darcy. So Darcy's nomination came from substitute teacher Angela Kiernan. Here's a bit of what Angela shared. Darcy goes above and beyond to connect with students on a daily basis. Almost every day, Darcy shares her lunch period with students who know she is a trusted adult that they can go to if they need anything, helping them feel valued as part of the school community. So today, Marcy, you are presented with this Above and Beyond the Call of Duty Award. Here you go. And here's what this award reads. In recognition of your dedication to the Caldera High School community in your role as Athletics and Activities Secretary, your daily efforts build meaningful connections, and the welcoming space you provide helps students feel cared for. Whether sharing your lunch period to listen and encourage, remaining after hours to help a student in urgent need, or returning to campus to assist a colleague, your kindness strengthens the Caldera community. Your resilience has inspired students and staff, modeling courage and perseverance. Through compassion and extraordinary commitment to others, Ben Lapine Schools is honored to present you with Above and Beyond the Call of Duty Award. Congratulations. All right, husband, got to come on up here. Come on up. At events? Yeah, okay. Come on up. You're in this. You're in this.
Perfect. All right, here we go. Ready?
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Burks. I would now invite a board member to read our resolution 2012. And whomever director would like to do it, thank you in advance.
Okay, Resolution 2012, Teacher Appreciation Week. Whereas teachers shape our future by their commitment to students' success, and whereas teachers engage students from many backgrounds and experiences, and whereas teachers spend countless hours preparing lessons, evaluating progress, counseling and coaching students, and performing community service, and whereas the community recognizes and salutes our teachers for educating our children, now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors for Ben Lapine Schools proclaims May 4th through 8th, 2026 to be Teacher Appreciation Week. And be it further resolved that the Board of Directors for Ben Lapine Schools strongly encourages all members of our community to join in expressing appreciation to our teachers for their dedication and devotion to their work.
Thank you, Director Lynch. Appreciate it. I will now entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2012.
I move to approve Resolution 2012 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second, please.
Okay, it was moved by Director Tatum and was seconded by Director Olson. I think Olson got it in first. Thank you. All right, now I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very, very much. And now we will turn it over to hear from our student representatives.
Hi, my name is Essie Voles, and I'm a senior at Summit High School. And at our meeting on Tuesday, Mayor Kelpler invited us to participate in a youth summit on May 4th. This will be an opportunity for students to have a voice in talking about Ben's future with Ben's city councilors.
Kinsey also shared a presentation about the new fundraising policy. This process has been in the works for 2 years and includes ideas from students, staff, and community members. Currently, fundraising comes from 3 main sources: district funding, student body fundraising, and community groups like PTA and booster clubs.
With the current way we do fundraising, there are inequalities. These include unequal access to resources between schools, burnout from constant fundraising, lack of clarity around available funding, and inconsistent standards across programs.
After reviewing several options, we recommend to move forward with a fundraising priority model that includes an optional mush pot or centralized fund. This will allow for voluntary participation and also have a place for the community to contribute if they choose.
This new model will include an opt-in system, a clear annual list of district priorities, and a committee will oversee how centralized funds are distributed. These decisions will continue to be guided by an equality lens and board policy. We would also want to send out community surveys to make sure the new policy is going well and how it could be improved by the community.
In the next month, Student Voice Council members will be visiting a few of our middle schools, web leadership classes, to get their thoughts about their schools. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the report. Appreciate it very much. Directors, do you have any questions for the Student Voice Council in their report?
I understand that you approved, or maybe approved is not the right word, but with the fundraising policy. Do you have any ideas about how things are going at your schools and where the money comes from sometimes for special programs? Sometimes regular programs too that are in the curriculum, but it takes money to go on field trips. It takes money to go in competitions. And athletics and music and everything. So I don't know, is there any discussion? Have you heard anything at school about that idea?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I haven't heard much from the students themselves, but I am the president of DECA and Caldera Model United Nations. So I work a lot specifically with fundraising. And there's a lot of burnout from the advisors of clubs that need a significant amount of money to accomplish their goals for students. So teachers get tired of constantly having to fundraise, and then students also do experience the fatigue from constantly having to go and beg for money from businesses.
I too haven't heard a lot from, let's say, our student body, but I also fundraise a lot for both my sporting events and like Sam mentioned, the burnout is a lot, especially once we get to the spring sports. A lot of businesses have already donated what they have set aside to donate. And so once we go and ask them in the springtime for track or some of those other events that are going on in the spring, they just don't have those funds to be able to give us. So when Kinsey brought this up with like the centralized mush pot idea, we just thought that would really be a good way to benefit everybody, in a way to like have funds where people could like apply for it if they needed later through that year, so we could just bring some more quality in the fundraising.
Thank you very much.
I'm curious, and maybe you mentioned this and I missed it, with regard to other Student Voice Council reps, did you feel like there was a general consensus of support of the mush pot concept, or did you have discussions with each other, or was it more just you sent reps to meet with Kinsey?
About 2 years ago, we had somebody from Washington, D.C. do a presentation to us about where fundraising comes from. And then we talked a lot about it in that meeting and then outside of that meeting. And then Kinsey met with a bunch of other groups, as well as community members and businesses. And then they talked it over and came up with a bunch of ideas that we got to hear at our presentation last Tuesday. A lot of us were actually in support of the more like, what would you say, like, stricter one is the option that was landed on as a possibility. We think it's like a good step to moving forward to hopefully get into the one where it is like if somebody donates, then automatically part of that will go into the central pot. As right now with this one where this solution that we would move forward right now would just be if they opted in to put money in the central pot.
Yeah, in the Student Voice Council, it was pretty unanimous that we take this small step towards a more equitable stance on fundraising. And many of us do agree that in a perfect world, it would be helpful to have a more centralized form for fundraising so it could be redistributed. But many of us are of the mind that it needs tweaks before it is ready to be district policy.
Great, thank you.
Directors, any additional questions? All right, well, thank you very, very much. And like I said, don't be afraid to chime into some of the different things that we're talking about tonight as well. All right, thank you. And now we're going to move on to public comment. The board and district leadership value communication from students, families, staff, and community members as it helps to guide the work of Ben Lapine Schools. Public comment is just one of those many avenues available to ensure this connection. Members of the public may always submit thoughts, questions, or concerns to the board via email or as well as in writing. Individual board members also make themselves available for phone, video, or in-person conversations. This said, I want to remind the public while this is a meeting of the Board of Directors that takes place in public, it is not a meeting with the public. It is a meeting of the board to conduct district business. As much as the board will not respond to public comment made during tonight's meeting. We will now open to public comment, and our policy is typically up to 2 minutes per speaker until the time cap has been reached for the agenda item. A timer is provided on the screens, as you see above, to our visual attendees to ensure every speaker receives updates during the presentation on remaining time. If the speaker goes over time or if the speaker's message is not in adherence with our policy, for example, being personally directed, abusive, discriminatory, repetitive, or off topic, I may ask the speaker to cease and terminate a speaker's privilege to address the board. At this time, we're going to hear from, we have Courtney Hines, I believe. And Courtney, all you need to do is just hit one of the things and bring the mic close to you so you could definitely be heard. That'd be sweet and great. All right? Appreciate it very much.
Hi, my name is Courtney Hines, and I am a mother of a first grader and a soon-to-be kindergartner. And we're new to the district this year. However, I was born and raised here in Bend, and I attended Kenwood Elementary School, which is now Highland, of course. Many afternoons, I walk from my childhood home with my parents to pick up my daughter from Highland. And it's really special to me to share that connection with her and have her attend the same school that I did. And that's why it's really hard for me to say that, honestly, my family has really been considering possibly leaving Ben Lapine. Our biggest concern is educational technology. And at your last board meeting, I really felt like for the first time that parent concerns about educational technology were truly heard. The discussion reflected curiosity and a willingness for you all to ask hard questions. You were open about your own concerns. You asked questions about how we're supporting our teachers with classroom technology, the potential impacts on student well-being, safety, and development. You also raised concerns about distraction, misuse, and lack of strong evidence supporting some of the tools that are currently in use. And because of that discussion, I believe there is already clear alignment with the intent and language of Resolution 2013. And I really want to thank you all for prioritizing that topic and taking action on that issue, as many school boards are doing across the country. This moment matters. Families are making decisions right now about school for next year, and a vote to pass this resolution sends a clear message that you're listening, you're willing to act, and that you're committed to improving the quality of education in this district. My daughter has worked really hard this year to make new friends and adjust to a new school, and it took her 6 months to really feel happy and confident at Highland. We really want to stay there. We believe in the school. The storyline approach is really magical, and so we want to stay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And now we will hear from Kimber Stovestan. I want to make sure I can say that correctly. Stovison, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for the pronunciation. All right. I'll get back.
My name's Kimber Stovison. I am not from Ben. I'm actually from North Carolina, but we have been here for a few years. I am a mom of 3 and a nurse here, a midwife here. And I'm here because I've been trying to get services for my middle child with the speech therapist for, it feels like, since she started school. I had her doing private speech therapy before she was in kindergarten, and then I was told that she'd be assessed in kindergarten. She goes to Desert Sky Montessori School, and it sounds like these access issues are a big problem, especially with these, like the magnet or the charter choice schools. But it's been really surprising how much effort it has taken to get like very simple services. At this point, I've sent emails to individuals, I've met with the principals, I've met with the teachers, and now I'm back to paying for private speech therapy, which is okay, like my family can afford it. However, it's very unfortunate that this is such a problem to access these services when we know that early intervention has the best outcomes for students. So I guess the main reason I'm here is to bring further attention to the fact that these services are lacking, but then also to just inquire about like what is being done to make sure that people have access to these services. It's not really fair to the students or the parents to have to work so hard to get basic services that we already pay for with our taxes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it so much. I am. I'm going to. I'm gonna get back. I just want to jump around a little bit. Okay. All right. Now we have Kate Tibbetts, I believe. You have to, press it. There you go.
Oh, okay, green. Okay. Hi, my name is Kate Tibbetts, and I'm in my 12th year teaching kindergarten for Ben Lapine. I want to express my gratitude to the school board for prioritizing concerns about ed tech and hopefully voting on a resolution tonight, and to urge you to consider removing one-to-one iPads from our K-2 classrooms as you develop standards for that grade band. I taught for 6 years without individual devices in my classroom, and post-COVID, when my students were all given iPads and I was asked to use them daily, I noticed immediate changes. Not only did the iPads increase distractibility in my students and hinder the development of critical skills like emotion regulation, but constant issues with the technology interrupted my own ability to teach. In 2024, my teammate and I made the decision to remove iPads completely from our classrooms outside of required assessments. At our open house that year, we told a crowd of parents about our decision, and the room erupted in cheers, literally. It's true, iPads are great babysitters, and when someone walks by a classroom where all the children are hooked up to devices, the room is quiet and students look like they're learning. But in truth, their brains are being wired with the idea that learning should be easy and should come with immediate reward. They don't struggle, engage with other learners, or stick with what they start. These days, my room is not as quiet. As I work with a small group, there's a buzzing as my students talk, read, move about the room, and yes, perhaps draw a unicorn instead of a word. And yet I feel pride because in the absence of their iPads, my students have learned to be learners. When they're bored, they can re-engage. They ask peers for help when they are struggling. They can problem solve, focus, manage emotions, and plan their time. Even the student drawing a unicorn is gaining critical fine motor skills and making meaningful connections that will support her writing later. My students are thriving. Today, more than ever, our world needs students who know how to be learners, to ask questions, self-motivate, and connect. I ask that you please consider removing one-to-one iPads from our K-2 classrooms. I'm proof it's possible, and I'd be happy to offer my advice and support to make this change district-wide. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. James Trosdell? Yeah, I said Trosdell. Yeah.
So my comment here is going to be mainly just based upon my anecdotal experience having a kindergartner at High Lakes and going on the theme of education technology. my kid wakes up and is just excited to be alive. And it's really great to see how excited he is, get to see him move around. All of that movement, all of that joy is just present. And even on our walk to school, we get to interact with the community, we get to do things, and I'm quite aware of his understanding and just existing in this world is remarkable. And then I get to school and I see him go into a room and he joins the rest of his classroom of sitting down in front of an iPad and just focused on that for the first part of the day. Instead of meeting other kids, getting to hang out, spend time getting to know each other and socialize, which is what I think is really important in youth education, is just understanding what it means to be a student, what it means to be instructed by others, how to act as a class. All of these things are just being passed by with the illusion that technology is helping. Individual learning can happen on an iPad, but it is exactly individual learning. And it has absolutely no basis in a classroom where you're all together, unless you have to be learning different things. There can be exceptions, but between K through probably even 5th grade, so much of that happens at the individual student level with the group that I think it is critical that we focus on that as our education outcomes, instead of focused on did they reach these levels. Not to mention the fact that iPads are dopamine machines. And all that's happening when these kids are interacting with devices is they're learning that easy clicks get big rewards, explosions, parades, points, levels. All this gamification stuff is absolute garbage for education. It has no place, and I urge you all to approve 2013 and to ensure that our children learn well.
Thank you. And next, we have another person to talk about technology. Okay, we've heard the message. We got it. Loud and clear. Thank you. Great. Cool. We're doing something about it. So, okay, we're on it. So, next person I want to bring up is Connie to talk about the lower housing tax exemption. Thank you. Connie Peterson. Hi, Connie. Yes, Ms. Barnett. No worries. No worries. Thank you. Ms. Barnett, would you like to go first, please? Thank you very much. Let me know when you're ready, ma'am.
Just in case I forget at the end to tell you, I'd like to say now thank you all for doing the work of the board. It's important and I really appreciate it. We all do. Okay, I have 3 things I want to talk about. Fear, community, and solution. I am a resident. I am one of the seniors in our community at Mountain Laurel Lodge. There are 60 of us. So anytime there is a threat of rent being raised, the fear is palpable among those seniors. If you can imagine, if your house payment goes up or whatever happens to you, these people are thinking in terms of, there's nowhere else to go. What else can I cut back on? If they have a part-time job and they could sell their job, then have a little bit more money, but then how are they going to get to that part-time job? So that puts them in a poorer status. Is there a prescription they can quit taking? So that makes their medical worse. So what about food? Where else can they get some free food? But the housing insecurity is the worst. That's the worst, thinking they don't have a place to stay. It shatters their confidence and it shatters their hope. It makes it hard to make any kind of a decision. So I'd like to tell you what the community is like there when there's not this overhanging fear of rent raises. And that's a community that supports the larger community of Bend City and Bend County. They're volunteers. Some of them have those part-time jobs that support the community. They have their grandchildren and their families that are there. And sometimes it helps the family of the person just knowing that grandma or grandpa is safe. So in that way, really helps the community. But the biggest thing is they volunteer. I recognize all of you because those volunteers have been in my apartment putting together slate cards, walking for you, doing all kinds of things for you. So, and they vote, and they make sure their friends vote, and that their family votes. So the next thing I'd like to talk about,
Miss
the
Barnett,
solution.
unfortunately, we.
8 seconds?
Yes, we got into the,
You hold the vote.
okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
What
Thank you,
we're
ma'am.
asking there is for, I have 16 seconds? Okay.
You're done, no, so, no, you're over. I would I was giving you the common courtesy, so if you'd like to finish the
You're
statement.
using up my time, Marcus.
No,
No.
you're overtime
Thank
right
you,
now.
overtime,
That's what he
ma'am.
was saying.
That's what I was
yes.
saying, ma'am.
Can I quickly
Yeah.
say it's an up or down vote? You hold the solution. They don't have to be in fear. We're asking you, please, please, vote yes on the tax extension for Mountain Laurel Lodge, and they'll keep supporting you.
Thank you, ma'am, appreciate it.
I apologize for going over.
Ms. Peterson?
Marlene got into a little bit of the emotional.
Ma'am, can you please push the button
Thank
on
you,
the
yes,
microphone?
thank you very much.
Press the button? There
Yes,
we go.
ma'am.
Okay. Marlene got a little bit into the emotional why, and I'm going to be the person that follows up on an email that hopefully you all received that I sent to you yesterday that really detailed how really, with all respect, I understand the school board's primary function is to be fiscally responsible and focus on student needs. But you play a huge role in getting this tax exemption, low-income housing tax exemption for Mountain Laurel Manor through. And the fiscal impact to Ben Lapine schools is minimal. I mean, you can talk big numbers, $700,000 over 20 years. But because of the complicated revenue sharing arrangement that y'all have with the state, when that percentage comes back to you, you're talking about, on average, about $1,046 a year over 20 years. And certainly, the role of our seniors and the fears of our seniors are worth that much to our community and to you as a board. And then the other practical thing is that exemption has been in place for 20 years. So it's money you haven't had for 20 years. So the absence of that money really doesn't have much of an impact. And yet you have that critical role of meeting that 51% threshold of taxing entities that it can approve the extension of the low-income housing exemption for Mount Laurel Manor. And I'm thrilled I hear it's on the agenda, because I was going to ask you to just do that. So thank you. Okay?
Appreciate it, Ms. Peterson, thank you. All right, thank you all for your public comment. We appreciate it very, very much. Okay, and now we're going to go for our consent for agenda. Here we go. I will now move to the consent agenda. Is there any discussion regarding the documents in the consent agenda? Okay, seeing that there is no discussion, I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Director Lynch. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Director Fisher. Now that I have a motion, it's approved and second. Any further discussion on the proposed motion? All right, being no discussion, I now call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, I believe the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, Dr. Burks, I believe it is yours.
All right, so in this month's consent for information, we have the annual report on EL 4.4 facilities, the third quarter finance report, and 2 documents that include district follow-up to comments and questions from the board members and members of the public.
Dr. Burke. What in the world is going on with this computer? Okay. Is anybody presenting on anything that we're just good to go?
Unless you want to pull it out and ask for.
Not in the consent, no.
Thank you very much. All right, now we're going to actually start looking at our reports. Our first report that we're going to be looking at was Dean Richards, Director of Secondary Curriculum, Instruction and Systems, along with Dr. Burks. And Dean Richards is joining us virtually, am I correct?
That is true. Let's see if he's here. He's there?
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
here.
yeah, look at you. You're like in space and the mountains. What a big day.
Big day.
Okay. All right, so we have.
And I have a teams coming in there too, with Monica's there and a couple, and I think Jessica.
Yep, I see them all. They're here. So Monica and Jessica and Colina, they're coming on up. You guys can just grab those two chairs right there, and then Katie will be there in the wings.
Yep, great. Let's talk about some social studies. We're here again, and mostly I'm going to be, I have a slide, but I'm going to have, because I'm only in 2 dimensions and they're in 3 dimensions, we're going to let those fabulous folks do most of the talking and kind of sharing about our social studies work that is upcoming. So I'm going to go on mute until it is my turn. So Monica, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Thanks for having us. So to my right here, Kalina, representing us through dual immersion in social science at Caldera, and then Jessica is our middle school representative teacher here. They're both on my ICCL committee. Jessica teaches at Pacific Crest.
Thanks.
And I'm the social studies TOSA. Go ahead. Maybe the slide's going to happen. We got connection.
Let's see, friends in the back. There we go.
Okay, so the very first thing that you guys are going to be looking at are our guiding principles for all social studies educators in Ben Lupine School District. This really grounded our work as we were looking at possible curriculum adoptions moving forward. Just a couple of them are students thrive with meaningful, inclusive, standards-based learning. Students are capable, independent thinkers in social studies, and students grow through collaboration, identity, and community connection. Throughout these, we find students thrive when they receive engaging, standards-based instruction in safe, inclusive environments that honor diverse backgrounds and individual learning styles, empowering them to think like historians by questioning assumptions, analyzing evidence, and considering multiple perspectives.
So with that in mind, we met this year, starting in October, doing an inventory of what our current curricular resources were, what we loved, what we'd like to see replaced, and to explore what the state had already approved. So then moving into November, we did our first round of review using the state's instructional tool, instructional materials evaluation tool. We focused on certain components of that based on teachers' interest. We finished that first round with a few resources for each grade level or each content area, Modern World History, US History, Gov. We did some field testing in January and February where teachers taught units from our front runners. I also want to back up 1 second, and I didn't say this. We had representatives from each school across the district, both middle and high school, present in our curriculum adoption meetings and review. So the field testing then finished up in February. We came to consensus, and we have a proposal to share with you tonight. And in May, we'll pick up with some training for those resources if approved. So at the middle level, we will continue with our TCI, Teachers Curriculum Institute materials that we're currently using as is. And Dean's gonna talk about pathway for high school.
And so our high school pathway will remain unchanged. We're going to continue for the first class that students will take is a modern world history class. Then they will take a U.S. history class, and then they would be able to take, it's a U.S. history class, or they can take an AP class or an IB class. So that is taken, that's an either or class. So, and then moving into a government class. So that's, if they take a government class, that's a semester class, or they may choose to take a full year-long AP class. So that would be the full year. Then students would need to take a second semester-long choice class that they could take. And we have lots of those options of other classes you can see there. Lots of really fun social studies elective classes that students can take. So lots of fun AP classes as well, with the psychology and just lots of really fun options that students can take across the way. So that progression in our that students take modern world history, U.S. history, and then into government along the way.
So our high school adoption for modern world history, we're deferring next year. We will continue with our Houghton Mifflin world history text. U.S. history stays with their Cengage text currently being used. American government we will also defer. And then our IB and AP programs use materials that are approved by their governing bodies. In terms of supplements, teachers are using a wide variety of resources in their room to bring the past to present. They use their fine professionalism and believe in their civic obligation to bring learning alive in their classroom through these supplemental resources. Both middle and high school uses supplements regularly, while the textbook serves as our backbone. It's not uncommon to see supplements in the classroom. All teachers will have statements in their syllabus allowing community to review materials as needed, as interested, and then the district does also support the supplemental materials through board ARs. Teachers thoughtfully select and utilize a range of evidence-based instructional resources drawn from multiple perspectives and reputable sources. Jess and Colina are going to talk about what that might look like in their classrooms, both middle level and high school.
Hi, thank you. So again, I'm a high school teacher, and instruction in our classrooms is strengthened through our use of high-quality supplemental materials from organizations such as the Stanford History Education Group, including Thinking Like a Historian, Reading Like a Historian, and document-based questions, or DBQs. These engage our students in reading, discussing, and writing with evidence from multiple primary and secondary sources. This work is grounded in state standards and centered on the 4 priority standards: building evidence-based arguments, evaluating sources, thinking analytically, and understanding historical and geographical content, while also prioritizing strong student relationships and overall well-being. These resources are essential for supporting rigorous, engaging instruction and fostering inclusive learning environments where students feel both supported and challenged. When paired with bilingual materials, often available in Spanish, and targeted language supports, they expand access for all of our learners, ensuring that students can participate meaningfully and build confidence and meet high academic expectations.
Supplemental materials like Newsella and atlases enhance, not replace, adopted core curriculum. They support differentiation, so all learners have access to equitable, rigorous content. For example, Newsella incorporates current events and diverse perspectives, making content more relevant and meaningful for students. In my 7th grade classroom right now, students are learning about medieval China and comparing that with modern China and how each of them became superpowers, and are able to compare and contrast through articles that are in Newsella, as well as with stuff that is in our textbook. So it's allowing them to get a more fuller picture of how the past incorporates into the present.
And one last thing here before we ask, two more things. Moving forward in May, our professional learning plan, and then into next year, will look as the following. For middle level, we'll continue to support with TCI. We'll also continue our tribal history, shared history support for 8th grade with our regional networks that we've established. Modern world history will be, and US history will continue to be supported through TOSA because the materials have been in use. And then lastly, our government, we're hoping to start a scope and sequence with that work, given the current materials their teachers are using across the district. And then one last thing that I blew by early on in the presentation, darn it, see if I can go back here. Having Colina as a part of our ICCL team is rich and a great support for us. And I wanted her to speak for a moment about TCI at the middle level and how it incorporates our dual language learners.
I would, pardon me, sorry. I think that TCI at the middle school level is really tremendous in the sense that it provides a rich database of information for our students to be able to access. So again, still with the lens of textbooks tend to be our backbone, and we use a lot of supplemental materials. But it also, they've just created such a rich baseboard for us to launch off of as a launching point, and it creates some cross. One of the things I think that I've noticed is that often in the dual language program, there aren't the same materials in both languages. So while Stanford History Education Group is a tremendous resource in the vast majority of our programs at the high school level, I can only access what they have already created in Spanish or send it out for translation. And then it becomes a less authentic resource to some degree. TCI has created a lot of those resources and a lot of those launching pads and already curated, which allows the non-dual language strand of modern world history to have commonality and alignment across classrooms and less divergence, which is really kind of nice sometimes. Not that we can't achieve both with both. Thank you.
Thanks. Questions?
Directors.
Oh, I was going to ask about the slide that you just booped off of.
Oh,
the one with
boy.
all the squares.
Mm-hmm. Can I get some
No,
tech support here?
maybe the 4th or 5th one.
Just go back.
Can you go back to, forward?
It's slide number 8.
The pathways.
Okay.
I have a question about this slide. I think that modern world history, the one floating up there at the top, is required in 9th grade at some of our buildings, some of our high school buildings and not others. Is that true?
Dean, I'm gonna let you address this pathway based on our meetings this year.
Yeah, so we do, Caldera has it, they offer it for 10th grade, and the other schools offer it at 9th grade.
And at Mountain View, is it a required, or you could also take AP Human Geography as an option?
For next year only, and then it won't be anymore. So
I
we're
see.
moving off of that pathway. Yeah, that is something that we're not doing anymore. And that is an issue that it doesn't cover enough of the world wars. And so students, when they move into US history, don't have enough background about what has happened that has sort of enough of the US history to as we move through that piece. So, and Katie can probably speak to some of that too as well, in the 3-dimension space there. There's other components to that, but we're moving away from that pathway.
So the moving towards a pathway in which more 9th graders are required to take modern world history? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, Caldera will still be able. They keep modern world history at the 10th grade.
I see.
And part of that is, Colleen, do you want to speak to some of that around for the dual immersion program as well?
So at Caldera, in the planning process and in thinking about what's best for students and creating a welcoming environment and really supporting student success, one of the things that we discussed for a very long time is where to offer specific required courses. And the thought behind offering modern world history as sophomores was to give them one less required core requirement their freshman year, as well as open up opportunities for them to jump in feet first, to be really excited, and to have a little bit more of maturity to talk about difficult topics in modern world history. And I think that it's a beautiful thing. Dual immersion specifically, currently under our current program model, they alternate. So some years they take it as 9th graders and some years they will take it as 10th graders, just due to staffing and the master schedule, as beautiful as that is. So we alternate our dual immersion curriculum of history of the Americas as well as modern world history and just toggle it every other year.
You explained that you actually asked my next question in the way that you explained that by removing that one additional 9th grade curricular option, you sort of create this double bonus wherein you get kids who are excited and ready for the material at 10th grade, but you've also removed a core requirement at 9th grade, in which we have so many.
And it's a
Math,
very, I think
English,
it's a jumping off the deep
physics,
end. Yes.
Yeah, PE, health, and then social studies in most of our buildings, which leaves just a single opening for many students, for their elective, and forces a choice between arts, music, world language that is challenging for many. So it sounds like Caldera has a kind of the same pathway, just done in a different order. Yeah, okay.
And we had the conversation about trying to sync it up. So the order is still the same, but for Ben Senior High School, that wasn't going to be a possibility with the IB program because of the way that the IB starts that junior year. So we weren't to be able to move modern world history to the sophomore year, that wasn't going to be possible. So we decided that what we would do is continue the modern world history, U.S. history, and government sequence, but not necessarily lock into the grade levels in which it occurs.
Before Director Tatum and before Director Fisher goes, I believe the students have a question.
Thank you, Marcus. This is kind of a two-part question, but I was wondering why government classes are locked behind senior year, and is there anything in the works to possibly change that? Because I'm a great example. I have a passion for politics, but I had to make a choice my senior year between AP government and then econ because I'm so loaded up with extracurriculars and optional classes that I didn't have room in my schedule for both.
Yeah, we have definitely discussed different ways to be able to do that. It is a tough one to be able to where do we put it? So do we move things down to like modern world history freshman year, and then move down U.S. history and then government to junior year, right? Like, I mean, there's being able to figure out where those things sort of slide to becomes the difficult piece, right? Those are always difficult conversations to be able to figure out when those, because that government becomes that year-long class that the AP government becomes that year-long class. So figuring those things out is always difficult, where those slots start to go. So there's not really an easy slide in a complex space there.
Thank you.
Director Fisher, Director Tatum.
I really appreciate you talking about supplemental materials. I'm curious, can you share some ways of how you promote or encourage teachers to utilize supplemental materials? Is there even perhaps a form of accountability to know that teachers are utilizing supplemental materials?
Yeah. So we've really worked on our systems district-wide, supporting teachers gaining access to the materials, these supplemental materials that they would like to use in their classrooms. And the routine here is in April and May this year, potentially, they'll request form, in a request form, they'll ask for these supplemental materials. We review them, quickly find out if there's a number of teachers across the district that would like to utilize them as well. Then we buy the subscriptions for them, and teachers have them available then in the fall.
Okay, so they have to plan for the academic year beyond the current year. And they do it individually, or do you have them by grade level or by school team come together as a department?
Yeah.
Or is it just like, hey, so-and-so teaches such and such, jumps in and puts in the request?
Yeah, so right now it's individual. So we have an accounting for their interests, and then we can see on the backside that all teachers at Bend High are interested in using the Wall Street Journal. And then we can move forward then when we purchase the subscriptions. We would also ask and see if other teachers around the district would be interested in that, because there's more buying power, right, often with these services, the more teachers we have.
So it seems like it would make even more sense of like, oh, you have all US history teachers on the same page, and here's the way to utilize these supplemental materials, as opposed to so-and-so and so-and-so. And it also seems like a potential disservice to kids if they're not all getting similar opportunities provided by teachers utilizing the supplemental materials.
I think I just wanted to add on. I know that that's kind of the district model. I do want to say, having worked at both Bend High and at Caldera, that I think within departments, there's a lot more communication amongst the teachers in the co-planning and the co-discussion of what supplemental materials we are using in our aligned instruction, which I think is less apparent at the 30,000 feet and more apparent in the nitty-gritty of our daily, like when we meet in common preps to plan and align ourselves with each other is what we're teaching in each of our classrooms, so that we're not necessarily lockstep, but we do take into account and discuss and calibrate with each other with what materials are chosen and used. And when we request things, I think we've often had discussions prior about like, yes, this is something that our whole department, and like maybe all of us put in, or maybe one of us says, for all of Caldera, we would like X. So I think that is one of the things, kind of what you're talking to about, more of that service to, and knowing what's in existence.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I think that's something that many of us are wanting to move away from is, oh, this special thing's happening for the election in this classroom, and then the kids on both sides in both classrooms on the other side never talk about the election, but this. So I'm hoping that is part of, as going forward, providing these supplemental materials and funding these supplemental materials.
You'll also see that specifically through that scope and sequence work with government. And that is a year in particular where there's some wonderful resources and projects out there that we're working on aligning so that all students have access to those programs. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just point out to a reminder of like the stage in the Ben Lapine world of where we are as it relates to standards-based instruction. And so reminding that this is all part of that we've lived in a world where everybody's very different. And now as we come together, our first step is like making sure that we're all saying across all of our schools, not even just within departments, but these are the most important rocks that we want to move. And then we can start to curate far better all of our tools that are related to that. So they're sort of happening simultaneously, but we haven't sort of landed the plane yet, knowing that next year is everybody in that space.
I love that, and I appreciate saying that. I think also just as we're thinking financially, the most bang for our buck. So I think all the more, I love that you're combining that. Thank you.
Cool. Director,
which is also sort of why we wouldn't have, like, we don't buy sort of the Wall Street Journal for everybody, because not everyone would use it, right? So we have that request system for those when you want it, that you use it and somebody else was going to choose the thing that we want. So we're going to we want to use our resources wisely, right? The other piece of our just the standards piece in particular, that social studies has 4 standards, and I think that it'll link kind of all this together: communication and argumentation, source evaluation, critical thinking, and social science comprehension. So you can kind of, when you hear those standards and the work that these incredible teachers are doing, you can kind of hear how these tools come together to really help make these things, like these ideas, come to life in these classrooms.
Director, is there any additional questions? Yes. Students, I'm sorry, go.
I was just wondering if the elective classes will be offered at all the schools, because I just know, looking at your list, a lot of them look so interesting, but just a lot of them are not offered at my school, and some of them that were offered were not offered later years, just because there was no like teachers to teach them. But I just know a lot of kids would be interested in taking those classes if they were offered. So would students have to go to other high schools to take those classes if they were interested?
Yeah, those classes are the ones that are offered across all of our schools. So sometimes it is like the Model UN class is only offered at Caldera right now. So they are often offered by what teachers where they have some level of expertise already. So this is a comprehensive list across all of our schools. And so, but we do want to sort of have them all available for all teachers, and for teachers across schools to say, oh, wow, that Model UN class looks really cool. Let me check in with that teacher and maybe I can offer it as well, and kind of get that Canvas course, and maybe I can start to bring that to my school as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm sorry, Dean, can you just explain that a little further? So the list of courses are cumulative across all the schools, but that doesn't mean that they're offered at every school. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes,
so
correct.
so then with Essie's question of, would she have the option to take a class at another school? Is that a possibility, or what does that look like?
No, that you wouldn't be able to go transfer to another school for another course.
Mhm.
You would have it would just be the ones that are available at that school.
Okay.
Or through Ben Lapine online, right?
Or through Ben Lapine online. Certainly those classes would be available. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Thank you, directors. My only question is pertaining to House Bill 216 from Oregon about African American history being taught in Oregon. When are we going to actually add that to the curriculum as part of what we should be doing? So I just want to find out when that's going to happen, because like we just mentioned, do we have teachers to be able to teach that? So that's one of those critical things for me. So that's one of those questions, because it was supposed to happen for the 25-26 school year, and we're in 25-26 right now. So I'm just trying to get a feel for when we possibly be able to start implementing this into our curriculum.
Yeah, that's fair, Marcus. Let me dig in on that, and I'll get you an answer right away. I'm going to put it on my to-do list right now. Yep,
Appreciate it.
We're behind on that.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Directors, any additional questions? All right, thank you all so much. And now I believe Ms. Legacy is going to come up and have a conversation with us about some things. And Steve Duvall, I'm sorry, Mr. Duvall, my bad. Steve's like, oh, I can get out of this one? I'm not, my bad.
We won't forget you, Stephen. We're a valued member of our community. All right, so this is an update on our standards-based instruction and grading.
All right, thank you. Before we dig in, just want to remind everyone that this is larger than just grading. Like, as you heard from social studies, that was pretty comprehensive. Like, it's embedding itself in alignment and standards, and even the lens at which they're looking through when they're picking curriculum. And so a lot of what Katie and I will talk about will be the back end of that when we report out those things with grading. But this initiative is more than just the grading component. And so I was really happy to hear the social studies folks can talk about that. That being said, what is on a lot of people's mind is the grade, because that is what students feel the impact in right away, and what shows up on the transcript. And so we did a grade data review from first semester that we're going to talk a little bit about. I just want to give you a background of what data we did in terms of comparing apples to apples. So we pulled a list of any teacher that was using our standards-based instruction and grading framework in their classroom this first semester. And we wanted to compare that to a time where they had not began that work. And so we went 2 years prior. And so what we did is we found any teacher that was teaching the exact same course and grade level that they were teaching 2 years ago. So if I taught Lit and Comp 2 and used standards-based instruction and grading, and I also taught Lit and Comp 2 2 years ago, that was a fair comparison. But if I taught Lit and Comp 3 and now I taught Lit and Comp 2, we didn't compare those apples to apples, just to make sure that we were talking about content, standards, same things. This report you're gonna see doesn't account for if a teacher at the end of the semester went in and changed a grade. Teachers have historically always had the ability to do that and have historically always done that, even before this system. This just captures what went on the report card, so I wanna note that too. Small students were removed, small schools, just because the N felt really small. And then when you look at the math, it's not gonna equal 100 because we had some withdraws or pass, no pass, or other reasons why a student wouldn't get a grade on the transcript. And middle school data is not included in this one because there's such a unique spot where both Cascade and Pilot Butte have been using this system for a decade, and so there's no pre-data available. High Desert's using varied types of standards-based grading because they jumped into this earlier, and so they haven't quite switched to our framework all the way yet. And then the framework at Pacific Crest was so small. That being said, I did have one school that had enough where they felt like they could compare their own teachers to 2 years ago, and their data did match the high school data we're about to show. So with that, I'll let Katie talk about the data.
All right. So we were interested in seeing, and again, this is really early, just a reminder that we are in early adoption year. So what that means is we have asked how many of our teachers, middle school and high school, are interested in being early adopters this year. Last year we called them pilot teachers. So we have these names for them. Next year is our full implementation, 612, for all standards-based grading. So we've got about 60% of our teachers that are currently early adopters, which is a great number. So we feel like we were able to get some good data, and Stephen explained that we're trying to compare, similar teachers teaching similar courses. What was it like a couple years ago, and what did we see just in the first semester, because that's real, and the first trimester. So essentially what we saw, and we looked specifically at A's and F's, we were interested, are we gonna see a really big difference, right? Because it is a completely different system. And so what we saw with A's, really with A's and F's, and you'll see F's in a minute, not a huge difference, honestly. So when we compare the A's, percentage of A's in traditional grading a couple years ago to this first semester, it was only about a 1.3 percentage point difference. So not terribly significant. And then when we looked at the F data, same thing, not tremendously significantly different. We saw a slight increase in F's, 0.7 increase, which isn't huge. So that was those were like the two key data points we were looking at in terms of grades from the first semester.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, I want to stress that this work isn't about more A's, more F's, more B's, more C's. We're not trying to change the system to achieve a certain level of this or that. We're trying to change the system to add clarity for students and add alignment among our teachers. But we all are also interested on the impact that could have on our students, and so that's what this was for. This data is not meant to be, we're trying to hit the mark exactly the same, or we're trying to increase or decrease. We want a student's grade in one high school to mean the same thing in another high school. That's where this work, but again, the impact on students, we want to be very cognizant of that, and that's why we ran these numbers to double check.
Yeah, and that's back to what Lisa was talking about earlier, which I really appreciate you kind of set that foundation, Lisa, around this is all about aligning what happens in a biology classroom at Summit High School should be similar to what's happening at Bend High School or Mountain View High School or Caldera High School or Lapine High School. So same standards, same adopted curriculum. You just heard us talk about pathways for social studies. So there's really a lot of this just alignment happening across our schools, which has been extremely unusual in our district. It's a good move because what it does is it guarantees that students, no matter what school they attend, they're getting similar experiences. So that's really, we don't use the word equity as much anymore, but it is a huge equity initiative to align and ensure that every student is having the same and a fantastic experience at every school. So that's kind of, this is all in line with that. So sorry, go ahead. Oh, it's me. So PD updates, so just kind of give you an overview of some things we've been doing this year. Again, this has been a multi-year piece that we've been working on. We host weekly drop-in virtual meetings for any teacher, any administrator who wants to attend. Those are Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. We give folks the opportunity to give us questions ahead of time if there's anything that's on their mind. They're meant to be really timely, like I have a question about this particular thing that I'm struggling with, or what about this, or it can bring attention to things that we need to be, Stephen and I and our team need to dig in on a little bit more. Some good questions come up. A lot of times too, we'll give maybe an overview of something that we learned or like a highlight of some piece of information to share with that group. So that happens every week. It's been happening all year. And then Stephen follows up on every Friday with a weekly email to all of our early adopters. They're all in the same listserv, so they get kind of we actually record all of those Wednesday meetings. So if you weren't able to make the meeting, you can watch the recording. Again, any slides that were included or information that was shared. That's every Friday. That goes out to all our early adopters. We continue to do the ICCL, which is our teacher leadership group. Every high school, every secondary and school has a ICCL team. It's made up of teacher leaders. And we combine that with our admin teams from each school. We do that 4 times a year, and we do a training. It's all been focused on priority standards, standards-based grading. We've done trainings around rubrics. What we're really focusing on this year is asking teachers who are early adopters to come and present to other teachers, because that's hopefully the kind of information and learning you can take the next day and be thinking about, okay, this is how I can apply this in my classroom. So we've really gotten good results with that. And then we have just various different teacher-led PD. Our end sessions, we have 5 of those for high school this year, 4 for K-8 because of the conference schedule. But that time is also used to talk about priority standards, alignment, standards-based grading. So just a lot of, our focus really around PD is a lot around this area because it's a huge change.
So here are some examples just in terms of the weeds, in terms of we talk about not just the grading. So this is an example from Megan Mooney at Caldera, who presented to all of our admin and ICCL about the work that she's done in her class with the priority standards and the assessments and the alignment we're talking about. And so this is just a graph it's not overly complicated, but she shares this with her students. At the top, you'll see her 7 priority standards, and then down the vertical axis on the left, you'll see the assignments and things that she is doing in those standards. And she even calls out the ones that are formative practices in white and the ones that are more summative and go in the gradebook in green. And so all of her students are going to be able to see what standards they have and how many opportunities they're going to have to show their demonstration of mastery in that. Really not overly complicated, but also a visual, really soothing thing for students and for her teammates to see in terms of, okay, in this semester, I'm going to give students enough opportunities to show me they know this particular skill. And so this is also from Caldera. I'd call them one of our more advanced in some of the work they've done with their teachers in professional development. This is just a simple semester mapping tool that she shared with teachers. It's nothing overly complicated, but we're just breaking things down for folks in a way that makes it try to be as simple as possible. And then this is from Emily O'Neill, also at Caldera, and what she's doing within her semester planning. So we're really taking a look at that entire course year and looking at all the priority standards. So if you're familiar with the term backwards design, the best practice there is like, what are the priority standards, or what are the things I need my students to walk out of my class with? And then from there you go, how am I going to assess them on that? and know that I can build an assessment that will tell me that information. And then from there, how can I teach them that thing that I need to assess them on? And so our professional development within standards-based instruction and grading has followed that as well. We've worked with our teachers on identifying priority standards and then building assessments, and now we're mapping those, and then now next is kind of that instructional piece. And so these are just examples that we've done, and these have all been teacher-created and teacher-driven, and so it's just an example of some of the things that are being shared across our sites.
Really quick, Stephen, for
Yes.
y'all chance, I believe the students have a question really quick.
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Duval. We've talked a lot in Student Voice Council, and I've heard a lot from administrators, teachers, and board members about how standards-based is supposed to increase alignment and increase clarity among students, but still we're seeing differences in how teachers are approaching a 3 versus a 4 grade between courses, between classes, and between individual teachers. What's the plan to fix this for next year?
Yeah, it's a good question, Sam. We're moving an oil tanker, not a speedboat. It's gonna take some time. This is a large system of hundreds of employees that have not done this work before. And so when you think about a teacher's day-to-day job and how they have to get ready for students every day and how much time they have to prep and plan, that work takes some time. We've gone into like, what does an assessment look like that's tied to standards? The next step is, how do we calibrate? And so we do professional development, and we will do professional development around, here is a student piece of work, here is the rubric. How would you score this based on the rubric? Cover your score up, pass it to the next teacher. How would you score this? Cover it up, pass it to the next teacher. And then we uncover. Did we all put 3s, or did you put 4s? I put 2s, I put 3s. And then we can have a discussion about those differences and calibrate and take it from here to here. That doesn't happen overnight. Even the best rubric is somewhat subjective at the end of the day, because there's room for interpretation from each individual person. But that comes from teacher conversation and teacher alignment, which we are doing and takes time, but it's not gonna be an overnight fix. I would argue that historically we've been really wide, and so we're not gonna go from this wide to this narrow overnight. It's gonna be more of this kind of process, and we are aware of that, and we are hearing that feedback from you, and definitely coming to speak to the Student Voice Council, I gathered that some more, and so we'll continue to have those conversations and those calibration pieces.
And I think it's also important to add that, next year we say is the implementation year, but the PD and the conversations and the discussions are not going to end. They're just going to need to continue, because it is a work in progress and there's a lot of change. This is, again, the most alignment and collaboration that we've seen in our district in a long time. And to collaborate and land on something that is more in sync is much more difficult than each individual teacher doing their thing, which is what we've had for decades in our district. So recognize that it does, from a student perspective, wow, I've got 7 teachers, 3 of them are early adopters of standards-based grading, 4 of them potentially are not. And even those who are our early adopters are still trying to figure this out. So the teachers are learning along with us, and we're learning from the teachers when they call us and say, we got to talk about this particular thing that we hadn't thought about. We do those kind of meetings all year, and we'll continue to do that. So we're hearing what you're saying and sensitive to that, and we'll mention it later, but we are planning on doing student feedback loops in May at all of our high schools. I'll be meeting with all those different student groups to kind of hear more of, Student Voice Council is a very important team. We want to hear from other students as well. What are you experiencing? What are you hoping to see for next year? What would be helpful for you? So we want to be sensitive to that.
Thank you, and I'm glad you brought up next year. With how rocky that standards-based was implemented at Caldera, what is the plan to help amend that and help it go smoother so that students have a better understanding of what the changes are and how they're impacted by them?
Yeah, I think we'll continue to work on, I think communication is really important. We forgot to mention earlier that we do push out every Sunday a communication on our Instagram and our social media. We also have interviews, I know Caldera's done a few of them with a student who asks a question, and then we have a teacher usually explain a certain particular topic. So we'll work on communication. We want to continue to hear from our building leaders about what support they need from us in terms of training. I think part of what's been rough this year, as I alluded to earlier, is you've got Canvas and Synergy. Some are on traditional grades, teachers. Some are on early, the early adopter system with standards-based grading. So from a student perspective, it feels like this is feeling bumpy, and we acknowledge that. Next year, when we're all in standards-based grading, we'll be using the same system. Teachers don't have to individually set up their grade books because it'll all be centralized, which will be more helpful and less opportunity for differences, variations, that kind of thing. So it's definitely a work in progress, Sam.
And just
Thank
to
you for your
add,
question.
yeah, I appreciate the question. Just to add, like we talked about in Student Voice Council, one of the questions that we're going to ask students is, what is the best way to get this information directly to you so you know what it should be and what it shouldn't be? And so when we talk with students, we're going to want to gather what media is the best way for them to digest the information so we ensure that they have it at the beginning of the year. So moving on, this is actually you.
Yeah, college partners. So, we offer a lot of college dual credit in our district, which is absolutely fantastic, and I would highly encourage students to take advantage of this. We have been in discussions with our college partners around what does this look like in terms of a move to standards-based grading? Does that change anything for you? We have some partnerships or articulations that say there has to be this particular outcome at the end of the course. So how do we ensure that that's happening with a new system of grading? So we've had, COCC is our largest college dual credit partnership. We just met with OSU Cascades interim president as well, or acting president, last week. And we've been assured from them, from COCC, definitely, OSU is in a little rocky spot right now, but checking on their level of commitment in terms of articulation. But we have strong commitments from them that they are in agreement with the standards-based grading, they support it. In terms of how that looks in a particular classroom, that's something that needs to be worked on with the math teacher in the high school and the mentor at the college. And so, like, for example, this week we have a big meeting with all the college dual credit teachers at Caldera High School. Stephen and I will be visiting with them. We'll be talking about, what does this look like moving forward? What needs to happen? I think the more we can bring teachers together to do their planning together regarding what this looks like, that builds capacity. So as other teachers come on and teach college level courses, there's a system in place. So kind of what we're doing is we're building new systems while we are implementing the system. So I'm confident that we're going to land that, but it's going to be collaboration, discussion, communication, and we do have support from our colleges. What they want to know is a student going to end up with an A, B, C, D, or F on their transcript? That's what they want to know. Yes, it's not going to look any different from their perspective when you look at a college transcript. The grades are there, and that's what they want to know.
And just an update on that, they are absolutely exactly what you said, they're in full support. This is the one kind of piece that had a different leg to it because OSU is OSU Cascades. They had to have some clarifying through OSU, and everybody's like, yep, no problem. This is great. We received transcripts from people all over the world that are in these systems. This is not a challenge for us.
So we've talked about this a little bit already, but continue conversations with the Student Voice Council. We are going to be meeting with the student groups at all of our secondary schools and getting feedback from them. We have done another early adopter survey. We'll continue to do those to learn more from them. We just did one recently with the last ICCL meeting we had. We're asking them questions about, knowing that some of your colleagues in your building have not been early adopters, what would be helpful for them moving forward because they're in a different place than you are in terms of their understanding and implementation. So really working with our early adopters closely has been helpful for us to be able to better serve all of the teachers and students, and we'll continue to do that.
So you have seen this before, this isn't new, but I just wanted to summarize it again. This is coming directly from our early adopters, the positives and the concerns, just to be transparent, 100% where we are. The positives from asking our folks was the instructional alignment, the conceptual buy-in around getting on the same page, doing the same things, having the same standards was super positive. Additionally, the student transparency component of this work was a really strong positive with the rubrics and the standards and the clarity of what students need to be able to walk out of the class with. And there was a really strong willingness to engage. It was really like, I conceptually want to do this and here are my questions. That was loud and clear. In terms of the concerns that came up, it was really interesting. There was concerns around both grade inflation and deflation. The survey was done before transcripts were printed, so that anxiety, as we showed you, didn't necessarily pan out, but there was like, oh my gosh, there's gonna be too many A's, there's gonna be too many F's, there's not gonna be enough A's. It was really both sides of the aisle. The decaying average was a hot button. It wasn't the purpose of the decaying average, but what number we had chosen for the percentage that was the concern. And so we actually are looking at a tweak to that based on feedback from both students at the Student Voice Council and teachers. And then just what Katie alluded to, some of the technology friction between our systems of Synergy and Canvas and how well they cooperate and don't cooperate at times. And so we're continuing to work through those options as well. But those were the main positives and concerns that came out of that. So I did want to read just one thing from a teacher that I thought was prevalent in terms of what we're hearing too. Like again, there's voices on both sides, but this one struck me in terms of, I know you hear a lot of voices against standards. I can only speak to my experience, but this is working. Sometimes I'm a little scared to say how much I like the system because I feel that others might attack me, but I am really happy we went this way. I am thinking intently with every lesson. Students are asking me to redo assignments, looking at rubrics, and talking about skills over points. I remember being in grad school and thinking, so grading is arbitrary? And being so confused on why no one taught me how to grade. I feel very confident now in my grades and can explain them. I am sure now there is a lot of pressure to abandon standards. Please don't. I'm hopeful we can stick this out and in 5 years we won't even be having such a battle. And so just the perspective from one of our teachers that have experienced success, you know, not everybody is, but I think that that's important to, you know, with the friction, there's also people that are finding great success with this work. So some of our next steps, as Katie alluded to, we have 50 to 60% of our staff that are early adopters and 40 to 50% of our staff that is not. And so we're working on a differentiated professional development plan heading into next year to ensure that the folks that have done early adoption can continue to grow and the people that have not can be brought up to speed. We're going to continue to get feedback from teachers on standards and rubric editing. Our language arts went through a standard editing process this spring, brought teachers from all over and have done that. And then we're going to continue to do common assessment work and backwards design work in our professional development in the fall. And with that.
Yeah, so I just want to say one thing quickly before we take questions is just, I mean, what we're embarking on or have been embarking on for the last few years is a very complicated change. It's very difficult. It's multifaceted, and honestly, I think we started with the idea of grading when we really should have started more with instruction. But you know, hindsight, you can always learn from looking back. But I think what we're going through is it's a lot, and we're asking teachers to really seriously dig in on, and reflect on their teaching. And we have some teachers who have been teaching 20, 25 years. And so wait, you're asking me to do something different. But I think in our profession, which is so important, we impact so many young people that if we continue to do things that we know aren't the best that we can provide for our students, because we don't want to change because it's hard, like that's not okay. So our district has chosen to take this on as a really important piece moving forward to build more equity, to build more clarity and more transparency for our students. And we know it's hard, we recognize that. We're open to feedback about how we continue to support and get better. But to not do what we know is best and better for our students is really just not okay. So we're in this difficult place right now. We just need people to hang in there with us, provide us constructive feedback. We're listening, we want to hear, and we want to be able to impact in a positive way. But what we're doing is a good thing for our students, and that's what we're about. So, any questions?
Student Voice Council.
Yeah, could you go back a couple slides?
Sure. Tell me when.
That one. Yeah, just, I might have missed this. In the positives, where were you getting that specific feedback from?
That is both from comments in the open comment section of our early adopter survey from teachers and from raw Likert scale questions we asked them. So this is a summary of the overall data from 200 early adopters. Those were the those were the takeaways from the teachers themselves.
So it wasn't students saying that there's greater student transparency?
No, it was from the teachers feeling like there's more student transparency.
Right. I speak about this issue a lot to the student body. Specifically, people come up to me, they want to know my thoughts, they want to know that their opinions are being expressed to everybody here. And that's not what it feels like from a student's perspective. Transparency has decreased, if anything, because at least the teacher could better articulate their own grading system when it was at their discretion.
And I hear that, and I appreciate that feedback, and we'll continue to work, and we're gonna hopefully get to sit down with students at all of our high schools and all of our middle schools and hear that directly from them this spring. And so if that's the message, then we're gonna also follow up with on what can we do to make it more clear. Just because a teacher knows how to explain a system that we know has problems doesn't necessarily be a reason why we shouldn't change it. So we just need to be better with the new system in terms of hitting that transparency, and that will be our goal. And so as I mentioned before, this is a work in progress. We're going to continue to try and push that. The user experience is super important to us, and that's why we're going to sit down with students at every one of our high schools. And so if, you know, I've heard it from you, and I've heard it from the Student Voice Council, and, you know, and we're looking for that feedback. And so when we sit down with each high school, if that's the message that comes out there too, hopefully there's some more problem-solving ideas that come from there that we can do better to make it clearer to you all.
I also think it's important that the better, I think, students understand kind of what, you know, what is this supposed to look like, right? I mean, probably what's happening now isn't where we want it to be, right? Because we're in process. But I think the more that clearly that students understand what should be happening, then they can better advocate for, like, wait, I'm supposed to have 3 to 5 opportunities to do well and show you that I understand this priority standard. I've had 2, and now the grade is coming, right? We're almost there. So I think it's important, you know, I believe in the power of empowerment, and if you understand that as a learner, what should be happening, and there's some variation from that that doesn't feel right, doesn't feel good, you should be advocating for that as a student. Like, wait a minute, we only got 1 chance, and we're supposed to get 3 or 5. I mean, these are the common assurances that we're working on, that we're gonna be working on with our teachers and our administrators. To say that we have decaying average and you have 2 times to try to show that you know how to do something, like, that doesn't even make any sense, right? Like, the idea is you have multiple opportunities to show that you have learned something or you have learned a skill. If that isn't happening, then that's not what we have in mind, right? So I think helping the teachers also and advocating for yourselves is really important.
Thank you. I just have 2 more things, and then I will leave you guys be. One, firstly, I've heard a lot about how my concerns have been noted, but I still haven't seen an action plan for moving forward.
So I'm going to push back on that a little bit, Sam. Part of the reason that we changed decaying average was directly from student voice. And so we are changing things directly in hearing from you. I don't want it to feel like your voice hasn't been heard. That's not our goal, but I can promise you that, like, there is a concrete change that we're making because of what you said and what the Student Voice Council said. In terms of a student listening session, you wanted us to hear from more students. We agreed. We're putting together student listening sessions in May. You wanted us to know how students could be empowered to learn more. We're asking that question directly in terms of what's the best way to communicate directly with you. And so, you know, I'm happy to continue the conversation as well. I don't want you to feel that way, Sam, at all. I want you to feel like your voice is heard 100% of the way. I don't know what else to do than to point out the ways that we've changed based on your feedback, but if there are other things that you don't feel like we're hearing, I'm more than happy to come back to the Student Voice Council and have another conversation to make sure that we don't miss those.
An action plan. More than just that. We want to see step by step how this is not going to greatly impact students, their mental health, and how they're being graded. I mean, obviously it's going to greatly impact how they're being graded, but making sure that it's not hindering their performance in schools. My second question is, how has this system impacted attendance? Because speaking as a senior and having the better interests of the senior class, I can say that many of my peers don't show up to classes unless it's a test day, because many teachers only are grading the final performance work.
So we don't have hard attendance data. I don't think that we're overly concerned about attendance compared to previous years. We haven't seen a drastic change in attendance, period. I think attendance is an area that we continue to work on growing because it's still not where we want to be coming out of the pandemic 5 years later. We want to be better, but in terms of a grading system being a reason why students don't come to school, we'd happy to look into that. But as Katie mentioned, the expectation is there's multiple opportunities for students to show proficiency. So if we have a teacher that's only grading a final thing and nothing else, that wouldn't be in line with what the system is intended to be.
Thank you.
Directors.
Go ahead. Sam, I really appreciate your questions. And the two of you, thank you for your hard work. I know this is, pushing a boulder, or whatever the saying is. And what did you call it? The oil tanker?
Yeah, let's change it. We're moving an oil tanker, not a jetliner.
You're still in the oil tanker, and I guess I am pleading, we're, less than 8 weeks left to get in that speedboat.
Yeah.
And I empathize with what students are facing, and I empathize with what teachers are facing, and what you two are facing, and what parents are facing. I do hold the district accountable for not in turn holding that 40% of teachers accountable and jumping into at least one class this year. And then they're gonna have to go cold turkey, or no, jump in, tear off the Band-Aid, whatever that is, come September. And I am concerned of how this will impact our students and families. And there's nothing that can be done now, but I think this is a really good opportunity to learn of when we roll out things and we have a better timeline, because it's gonna be even harder for kids and teachers and families come September, when we still only have 60% who have at least just done one class, not even all of their classes with standards-based grading. And so I'm pleading whatever you can do in the next 8 weeks before folks take off for the summer, and yeah.
So
And then-
Cameron, I'd like to speak to that if I could.
Sure.
So just because a teacher is not an early adopter does not mean that they are not implementing, to a certain degree, standards-based grading. So for example, I know at Mountain View, they've got about 75% of their teachers are currently implementing, they're early adopters. But that leadership team over there has required every teacher to do several rounds of how do you attach a standard, to an assessment, to a priority, to a lesson or a unit. And then they report that out to their department. They report that out to the staff at an SIW meeting. So it isn't that the 40% have been doing nothing, at least at the high school level. It's that they have not necessarily been an adopter in one of their classes. So I just want to clarify that. So it's like I've been sitting back doing nothing as a teacher, and now all of a sudden I'm diving in the fall, because that obviously is not going to set people up for success.
Right.
Most
Well, maybe
importantly,
I
the
need
students.
more, I have some data here of the percentages for Bend High and Caldera. I have approximately 30 for Mount View, under 10 for Summit.
Yep.
La Pine doesn't even have the information, but I'm gathering that, so I'm hoping that.
Yeah, I have the information now.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so there's about 75% at Mountain View, because I knew that number was a little low. So I checked in with Mr. Hicks, the principal, and I checked in with Scott O, the principal at La Pine High School, and they've got about 15 adopters right now, which is about 60%. Their staff's a little bit smaller.
So you're saying the folks who aren't in that, they are still potentially doing some sort of standards-based
Yes.
grading? We just don't know what it is.
Yeah, so
they're still required.
We're hoping.
No,
No,
we're not hoping. We know. Let me talk about La Pine High School. So Scott O, or Olszewski, I should say, call him Scott O, the principal there, and his leadership team they're the ones who actually at the beginning of the school year started these rotations of every teacher, whether you're an early adopter or not, and obviously he's trying to focus on the folks who aren't early adopters, had to do a full rotation cycle through. What does it look like to take a standard, apply it to a unit? What does the assessment look like? How do you design the assessment? What is the rubric you're using to do that cycle of work? So like
But
at
are
least
they
for
doing that
several
for their
units.
classes?
Yes.
But
Yeah,
they-
no,
they-
it's not
They
like a
just wouldn't
separate thing.
necessarily be putting
Yeah.
a standards-based grade in the grade
Right,
book,
right.
but the
So they're doing
standards-based
the process.
instruction is happening, and they're still required to go to professional development in their building to learn
I
about
get
it.
that. That just doesn't feel suffice to me. That
Okay.
feels like, okay, you're dipping your toe in, but, I mean, hearing from students and families, we need more than dipping the toe in. I appreciate that. It's something, right?
Yep.
But, so, I
It's
still
not cold
feel-
turkey, in other words. It's
Yeah,
not
no,
cold turkey.
hopefully. I mean, I know we have a handful who don't touch it at all. We do know that. And they have a lot of students who have experienced their classrooms without any exposure to standards-based grading. I mean, and that's just, it's just reality. And I do also appreciate you mentioning the advocacy, and I hope you all take this back to your, peers and say, when you notice that it's all coming down to one final exam versus, what did you say, 3 to 5 is the vision, that if you can't get anywhere with your teacher, you can't get anywhere with your administrator, other folks to talk to, because I think if we don't have that happening and for kids to feel that it's okay to be able to speak up about that, and it could just be, who knows exactly why that might be happening. I am concerned that that's happening. And then I am also really sad to hear that teacher quote that they don't necessarily feel okay to spread the word how much they appreciate standards-based grading, because I truly believe in it. I want this to work, and clearly that teacher wants it to work, but is a little hesitant. And we want somebody like that to be able to be our, aside from all the other teachers you get to talk about this and who are doing a lot of the footwork for everybody else, we want to spread that burden. I don't know, that's not the right word, but it does make me a little sad that they shared that. And also at the flip side, it's great that they feel so good about it. So I'm hoping we have more of those in the future. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
A couple of things. Could you talk a little bit about this technology friction? So we've just hit our second quarter checkpoint.
Yep.
I, as a parent of 3 high school students, am experiencing a lot of that friction. My kids are experiencing that friction. It's extremely confusing and challenging. And I hear that from students, from parents, and from teachers. We had Summit hosted, parent-teacher conferences on Monday night. We should straw poll how many of those conversations were about not knowing what their kids' grades are or what they need to do. And I worry that in our passing our board policy mandating the full implementation of this in the fall, that we've given IT and instruction a goal that they cannot meet. Or maybe they can, maybe the friction is going to be worked out, but this isn't right now. This is really challenging.
So speaking to that, Canvas is our learning management system. Synergy is our student information system. And to delineate between those two, a student information system is where we keep all confidential information. We take attendance, student 504s and IEPs, transcripts, grades, all of that lives there. That's the system we use to report to the state of Oregon. That's the system that's officially our database. Canvas is a learning management tool, which is meant to be a workflow system between teachers and students for what's going on in class, posted assignments, turned in assignments. What happened is due to, Canvas has its own grade book, I should say. It's not the learning management system, it's the Instructure's additional piece that connects to the learning management system, but they have their own grade book. And during the pandemic, we were forced to jump in really, really quickly with digital learning, and Canvas was the management tool that we used to address that. And to have students log in, students turn in their assignments, student receive feedback. And through that process, Canvas kind of defaulted in some of our sites, but not all of our sites, to also be a grade book as well. And we kind of lived in this world where we had 1 foot in Synergy and 1 foot in Canvas with the grade book. And there was one year where we had teachers try to keep grades in both, and we tried to sync them. And then we would find that Canvas, for instance, would have a grade here, and then we'd look at Synergy and they wouldn't match. That was also confusing, regardless of standards-based grading. That was before standards-based grading. We have parents looking at 2 different systems with 2 different grade books. And so we realized very quickly that that's not sustainable, because even the tools that were supposed to talk to each other weren't talking to each other in a way that made sense. And so there was a really hard conversation that had to happen in terms of like, where should the grade book be? You know, happening at the same time was this conversation around our standards-based grading instruction work. Canvas's gradebook does not allow for standards-based grading feedback, nor can it talk to Synergy. And so it really made it clear that Synergy needed to be our gradebook of record, because it's also our student information system. Additionally, 90% of our parents already have access to Synergy through ParentView, through registering their students, and we had about 45% of them as observers in Canvas. And so there was a lot of things that kind of went into that. So then right now we're caught in this in-between where you know, we have some schools transitioning away from Canvas for the gradebook piece, but not for the LMS piece. We still have standard expectations for teachers in terms of their syllabi and when things are due in Canvas, but we need that gradebook to be Synergy. Now, to Katie's point, when we have some teachers using standards-based grading and some not, Synergy also has a little added clunkiness that I think is contributing to I can't find my kid's grade. That will resolve next year when we're all on the same system. There are additional clicks that parents have to navigate this year that they won't have to navigate next year, because you can either from the school level default it towards a traditional gradebook or default it towards a standards-based gradebook. And so right now our schools are defaulted to a traditional gradebook and not a standards-based. And so to find the gradebook the way we want it to look, there are additional asks and tasks for parents that we don't want and will go away. But I think that's contributing to it. And then additionally, that move away from Canvas as the gradebook to being actually where it belongs in the student information system has also caused some confusion, because students had gotten used to finding their grades in Canvas and calculating it there. But again, the Canvas gradebook is not the LMS. It was an additional feature that we leaned into during the pandemic, and now we need to pull that back a little bit.
And this is really part of that bigger discussion we're having about ed tech. You know, we still have a lot of teachers who are putting all of their class basically in Canvas and really comfortable with putting their grades on Canvas and so on. And so we're trying to get folks to move away from the idea that the learning management system is the way to digitally like either accept, you know, or push out curriculum or push out your syllabus or collect assignments, but it's not meant to be the class, right? And I still think some of our teachers are kind of trying to figure out like, what is the role of Canvas? How is it different now? It is a tool. It's not instruction. It's not the teacher. It's not the class, right? And so there's a little bit of that tension in there too. And then I alluded earlier, picking up what Stephen was talking about with Synergy, is because we had about 60% of the teachers who went to early adoption, they had to go in at the beginning of the school year and individually set up their Synergy accounts. And so when you do that versus everyone's account is set up all the same way over the summer, which will what happens this year, that'll happen into this coming school year, that also created confusion, because then what happens is there were some glitches and some of the grade books were set back and weren't set up the way they should have been. So it's just, that has added, so there are all these little pieces. I know this is a really long answer for you, Jen, so I apologize, but there's all these pieces that have contributed to a confusing situation for many people. So
I think
we
one
recognize
other
that.
added component is just knowing that this was a challenge that we would experience this year. We made it very clear that the only thing that has to be in Canvas is a syllabus. That's it. So there is no assumption that a teacher uses that consistently. The assumption is Synergy is where you need to spend your time. So if at some time you hear something related to like, oh, well, I have to keep these 2 things up, we knew that's a challenge. And so we said, no, we got to go over here. This is the one thing that's required.
And actually, we changed that requirement 3 years ago. So from the district, all we are saying is you must have your syllabus and your basic information on Canvas, and that's all. If you want to use a workflow LMS, Canvas is the one you're using. You're not using Google Classroom, because that was an issue before COVID. We had teachers using 6 different, digital platforms, and that was confusing for families. So we're trying to kind of, again, align, narrow, but we've got folks who, it takes time. We're moving an aircraft carrier. So there's lots of different pieces here that we're trying to align at the same time.
That might
And
be
I-
harder than an oil tanker.
I know, as, again, the folks sitting up here who adopted this policy that mandates this, be fully in place by the end of next year or into the fall, I hope that we as a system are extending a lot of grace to the students who are on this battleship.
Yep.
And
talked
who
about
have been on it, frankly, since COVID. They put up with a lot in middle school, and now they're riding this real slow move. It's been a lot.
It has, and I have had conversations, and I know Katie has, and I have heard directly from principals talking to teachers about giving grace and benefit of the doubt to students through this transition.
Spending a little bit of extra time
Yep.
hearing
Yep.
concerns.
Yep.
My last question is about how standards-based grading takes into account our code of conduct as it pertains to plagiarism and cheating, which had a real, this is like a level 1, like this, or this is a level 2, and we have a way to sort of deal with those academically. And I'm wondering, I consume a lot of the content you post on social media, and I obviously don't go to the PD sessions, but could you just talk a little bit about how you are coaching teachers?
Yeah.
In those PD sessions, specifically about academic
Integrity.
and the code of conduct.
Yeah, so the foundation of a standards-based grade book is that the score that is in the grade book is an accurate representation of what a student knows and can do. And so when we talk about plagiarism, we're in a spot where that's not an accurate representation of what a student knows and can do. And so we're working with teachers on that in terms of obviously we're not going to submit that score, right? And so in my mind, it's more of a consequence for the student to have to do it again and show me what they know. And so additionally, what are the behavioral consequences that a school would have for plagiarism to teach and reteach those expectations to students that get that? Because as you go up the scale, that consequence gets bigger and bigger, especially as you head into college. And so it's a dual lane around the academic piece, because we need the report card to be an accurate representation of what a student knows and can do, and so we're not going to accept that. And then what other way are we going to make that up, or I'm going to hold them accountable to that work? Because most of the time, a student does that either for ease, because they don't understand something and they want to turn something in, they're busy, they can't, there's a lot of different reasons. And so teaching students that, no, you need to sit down and take the time and do this right, I think is really important. Additionally, we can have school-level consequences through the code of conduct for plagiarism, right? And those can be things around time missed, extracurriculars, whatever we want to tie into that. And so we really coach in that dual lane piece around separating academics from behavior. We can hold both accountable. And so that's what that might look like. We currently in the system, that's a great point, Jen, too, because in our teacher handbook, we don't call that out specifically. And so that's number 1 on my priority list for version 2.0 is to have an academic integrity component to the teacher's
I think that'd be
handbook.
really helpful,
Yep.
because there is that question, we don't want a grade to reflect behavior, but also we don't want a grade to reflect plagiarism, and I
Right,
do think
exactly.
there should be an explicit, yeah. Okay.
Agreed. Other questions?
Further questions? All right, hearing no questions, thank you both. And we will now hear from Kinsey Martin for a policy update.
All right, good evening. I'm Kinsey Martin, I use she, her pronouns. I am here to talk to you about fundraising and donations, policies and procedures. And at this point in the night, maybe that doesn't sound super exciting to you. I think it sounds really exciting, not just because it's my job, but I think really this topic is, yes, it's about policies and procedures, but it's really also about our community really coming together to talk about how we take care of our students and make sure that they have an enriching experience. and do right by all of them. And I just want to highlight throughout the contributions our community has given throughout this process. There's been really amazing partnership and engagement, some really honest conversations. And so I'm excited to just share with you an update. With that, though, it is 2 years worth of work in about what's supposed to be 10 minutes. So buckle up. I will give a very abbreviated version, and I'm super open to questions if I skipped over something that feels not clear or needs further conversation. Students got a much longer version the other night, and so as did community members in some follow-up sessions. So jump in if you have comments or want to contribute. This is kind of the flow for the next 10 minutes. Super briefly, I'm going to just talk about where have we been, and then we'll spend more of the time on actually where are we going from here, what's the plan moving forward. But in order to do that, I want to just look back at what we've been up to over the last 2 years. So we started with some research. Thanks to Director LeGrand, we had a policy fellow out of DC who came and worked with us, did some research around other model policies around the country and the state. We've done close to a dozen listening sessions with different groups, students, Equity Coalition, PTAs at each level, booster clubs, athletics, finance and business office, CTE programs, Lapine South County, local businesses and donors, and administrators and staff. And then we cycled back through all of those to give them an update on here's what we heard you say, here's what we're thinking, what do you think about that? And you'll see in your board packet there is a handout. There's a one-pager that just has kind of what we initially heard from the community, and then you'll see there's a slightly longer packet of feedback from that second visit through to say, this is what we think we heard, this is where we think we're headed, what do you think about this? So you can get a glimpse of sort of what the community reaction was at that point. Let's see, and then importantly, in addition to that qualitative work, we also dug into finances and current funding pathways and structures. There are really 3 different pathways that are important. There's district funding that goes to student activities. There's student body funds, which means generally students raising funds for their activities. And then there's community funding, and that means our PTAs and booster clubs that are contributing through their organizations and efforts, but in service of our students. So all 3 of those pathways contribute. That's a very brief overview of the financial structure of this. Happy to chat further about that. And essentially what we were trying to work through is what exactly is it we're trying to solve. We know that fundraising needs to be addressed. Our policies were old. We're hearing a lot of just frustration with the processes, but to get our arms around what is it we were actually trying to solve for, that was why we went through those engagement sessions and talked with the community. And from there, we actually did some system dynamic mapping to kind of figure out what are all of the pieces of this. And given that stakeholder engagement and the voices that we heard from, we mapped it all out. You don't need to be able to see the specifics at this point, but essentially what we did was try to say, okay, if we pull on this lever, what happens over here? Well, that would go against what we just heard from the community as far as, too much change, not enough change. And so this is where we really tried to embed that feedback directly into decision-making. And so from there, this is going to fill up with a lot of words, so I'm going to go through them one by one. This is probably the most important slide as it builds of the last 2 years. So the problem we're trying to solve for, first and foremost, is that students have very different access experiences and outcomes based on the school and the program that they're in, based on the neighborhood they live in. We know that's true. And I don't think a single person in this room, any of you up there, anyone in our community feels good about that or feels like that's okay. So that's like full stop, that's the problem we're trying to solve for. And we know there's a lot more stakeholders out there that we also need to attend to. We heard very loud and clear that our coaches, our staff, and our parent leaders, I would say family leaders is maybe more inclusive, We've got some grandparents and other family members who work really hard in these leadership roles as well. They're exhausted from constant fundraising, and just for what they say feels like the basics to support a school, to run a program. Nobody's feeling really good about the state of fundraising, and the amount of effort that's going into it ultimately becomes a staff recruitment and retention issue. And we need our families to feel valued and like they can contribute in a way that's meaningful and productive and doesn't burn them out. And so we also know some of our schools don't even have a PTA or a booster club. We've got a couple elementary schools, at least 2 that we know of that don't, of our 19 elementary schools, and some of our secondary schools as well. We also just know that we don't have great line of sight on all of the booster clubs. Some of our high schools have several, and in talking with staff at the high schools, some of them weren't entirely sure, well, we think this one is, but the leadership kind of comes in and comes out. So we also know that that sense of exhaustion and burnout sometimes comes from not feeling like they're valued and well connected into our system, which is its own piece of this conversation. We heard loud and clear as well that students and staff are not clear on available funding and how to plan or make decisions for their own needs. So when they don't know what's coming in from the district, what actually is my program getting from district funding, what is coming in through student body funds, what's available to me, and what comes from the community, if they don't know that, it makes it really hard to have long-term plans or even just one season or one school year plans, which means we've got transparency issues and we've got, accounting issues that need to be addressed so that everyone is clear. Community members shared that they experience really disjointed, overwhelming, and unclear requests. So essentially, they're just getting knock on the door from Johnny down the street or an email from Johnny's dad that they know through their business. And often they will say, well, we just grant the first 10 people that knock on our door or that send us an email till we're out of funds, and then we're done, which, as our students mentioned earlier, means that like spring sports and some of our clubs who aren't out there first aren't getting the support that they need. It creates competition amongst our schools and programs. It scatters support. It makes us look disorganized when we go back out to the community in other contexts to ask for financial support for our school system. It's hard to say, no, trust us, we've got a good plan, when their experience is they're just getting asked kind of helter-skelter. And we know that we need that community support, that we cannot decrease it. Our intent is not to decrease it. We just want to make it a better experience for our community members. Our leaders, in particular our school administrators, and our athletic directors shared that they're not clear on direction as to what are the district priorities. What is the baseline that I'm supposed to be fundraising for? Can I just do what I want? I've never been told otherwise. What should I approve and sign off on or not? In the absence of that, I'm going to sign off on everything because I want kids to have money. And so that leaves leaders unable to support their parent groups and their students and staff appropriately, and they're feeling like some guidance would be helpful. This is a huge one, a lack of common standards for basic needs across schools and programs is causing confusion and a lot of discrepancies. So when one program at one school says, well, we need $100,000 to run our program, it's the bare minimum, and another school's like, can we just get $10,000 to run the same program over here? There's questions about, well, what's the difference? How come you need that and they need that? And if we aren't clear as a district on, this is our standard expectation for any baseball program at any comprehensive high school, or for any fourth grade classroom that a fourth grade kid should expect to go on this type of field trip or this quantity of field trips over the course of their year. So that's work that we really need to engage on. You'll see that come back up in just a minute. And then the inability to monitor and enforce compliance with federal obligations and fiscal requirements. This is a huge issue that we need to solve. Most of it we can do, but it's like literally people doing things by hand, crunching numbers, and it's taking significant amounts of time and energy to get the type of audit information that we know we need to have at our fingertips. It causes questions around asset deterioration when there's capital projects popping up from fundraising, and there's no plan for sustainability or long-term, investment in those projects. And so we know that we need to be clear on those expectations, and so that we can support the people that are doing that work. And so as we move into like, okay, that's the problem. Let me go back for a second if I don't mess it up. This feels huge as a problem that we're going to just quickly solve this spring. And so I just want to note that that's not the plan. The plan is not to solve it this spring. The plan is to step into a multi-year solution. And so you'll kind of see that rollout and timeline in just a minute. But I said at the beginning of this slide that this is probably the most important, because this has really uncovered a lot of, we know we've got systems issues, but this has really helped us see status quo. Our current process is not working for anyone. Nobody said, I love it. Where it was like, I don't know if I like the changes you're proposing, it wasn't because they love the current state of affairs. It was because change is hard, and what is that going to look like is just part of the process. So this is what we're trying to solve for. And as we looked at our options, one of the things we were trying to sort of filter through is, how do we make this decision, regardless of, we know we see the problem, we know we've got some options, but how do we go about selecting the right path forward? Our equity lens has been a big part of this process, thinking about whose voices did we include, as we look at and consider each decision that's on the table, how does it impact those different voices and those different groups? So that was a significant tool. Typically, we would go straight to board policy to say, what does board policy say? That we got to stay in those guidelines. And that's been a difficult piece, is that as a district, we haven't had board policy on this topic. And so I know that's on your agenda in a moment. Just want to make a plug that that is a very helpful tool for us to see, in the bowling game of policy landscape, it's nice to have your guardrails up so we can stay in the lane. And so that is a tool that we would typically rely on in making the decision. So as far as the options on the table, technically status quo is on the table. We could do nothing. The sister schools and buddy system has come up as an option in a couple of contexts. I was giggling in the back because the students are calling it mush pot now too. We started using that term early on, maybe 2 years ago in their first listening session, just as like a placeholder for like, we all kind of got that central pot that we'd put money. And in the absence of substituting it with a more professional term, it just stuck. And so mush pot is on this slide for you. So a threshold mush pot model, meaning like a team or a program gets to keep, I'm making up random numbers, 100% of their fundraised money up to $10,000. And then if they continue to fundraise beyond that, 2% goes into the mush pot. And the mush pot then becomes a centralized fund, I guess I should call it, that we can look at and prioritize if another school doesn't have a PTA and they want to do some of those similar fundraised activities, we can distribute some of that money to that school so that they can have that community support. Number 4 is similar, except that there's no threshold where you keep 100%. It's just every donation that comes in, 2% is gonna, or whatever percent, is gonna go into this central fund and get redistributed based on need and priority areas. And then the 5th one is having those priority areas designated with more of an opt-in voluntary contribution to a centralized pot. So those are the options that from our research, from our listening sessions, that seemed like viable options. You'll see this little sidebar over here. These are sort of a la carte options that we can attach to any of these, and that we fully intend to do both A and B, regardless of what approach we take. We know we need to update administrative practices, approval forms, communication, circling back to students so that they know how much their team or program actually raised, et cetera. And then shifting our district funds and practices to account for federal obligations. We have to comply with Title IX. We have to be able to, produce data for financial audits. So we just need to improve those systems no matter what. So those were kind of the list of options. Using all of the qualitative and quantitative feedback we've been gathering, number 5 is the direction that we are proposing to go. I really appreciated hearing earlier when you were talking with the Student Voice Council reps about their opinions on this. In our conversation last week or whenever recently, they wanted to go hard. They were like, we should be going with like number 3 or number 4, like obligatory contributions, because I think they have a strong equity lens and they see if every donation, a certain portion goes into this central pot, we will close that gap for student experience so much faster, which I think we all understand is, feels pretty straightforward. And they were very perceptive as to the community emotional context and just needing to gain trust with our community for them to see. We don't have a lot of trust and transparency built into our system at this point around if we're gonna have a centralized fund, who's deciding, where does it get distributed? How does that decision get made? Is it gonna be fair? If I'm a donor, is my money gonna go to the places that I would like it to go? And so, while I think, you heard from the students that they were interested in going a little further towards obligatory contribution models, there's also an understanding that we've got to work with our community. And if we ask our community for their voices, and we heard over 20 listening sessions, nearly 100 people involved in those conversations, if they said we're not there yet, we need to listen and go at the pace and push the pace, but go at the pace that our community will come along with us, because this is a community conversation. So that is the approach we're looking at taking. I do just want to explain, what does that actually mean? So no obligatory contribution to a centralized fund. We are not going to take an automatic 2% off of every donation. We recognize grandma and grandpa might donate $25 to their grandkids program, and taking 2% off isn't maybe in the best interest and good faith with our community to take that approach. One possible exception, you'll see that asterisk, when it comes to capital projects, if there are donations related directly to capital projects, that might be an area where we do take an indirect amount off because of sustainability and some of those ongoing costs associated with capital projects. So that needs further development, but that's just that might be the one place that just to be able to sustain a new building on campus, a new structure, something really substantial, that we would want to think about an indirect portion of the donations being obligatory. An opt-in structure, so essentially there will be some communication going out saying, hey, you're a donor. As you donate to this school, this program, this team, would you also like to donate to, or donate a portion to, and then have some opt-in places that they can say, actually, yeah, I would like to do that. You've probably seen that on GoFundMe, different opportunities to do that. I think you can do that when you do your taxes. You can, did you want to donate a little bit over here? So it's essentially just a chance while people have their checkbooks out and are trying to support students to say, hey, did you know there's students over here who also have a need? Would you care to support them? Because our community said, and I really appreciate, we had several local businesses, Chamber of Commerce, Education Foundation, and some other businesses, small and large, and they all said, if we knew that there were these other priority areas that weren't getting funding, we would totally support that. We're just giving them money where we're being asked for it. We didn't know there were needs in other places. So the opt-in structure would help illuminate some of those opportunities. With that, we would need to create a list of priority areas. And then as far as transparency and trust, I think we'd need kind of a committee to help us look at that centralized fund, mush pot, and figure out a system for deciding how to distribute that, because it is community money, so there should be community involvement in those distributions. Eventually, if this were to get large enough, it might be something where we look at partnerships with Ed Foundation in a different way. This next year, our thought is let's just see what happens and see how the community responds, and then respond accordingly. And then those last two are things that need to happen no matter what. Like I said, articulation of program standards. What is a standard track and field program at any comprehensive high school? I learned through this process that those pole vault mats cost, I don't know, $50, $60, sometimes $70,000 just to get one of the appropriately sized, quality mats, which is important. Kids are, falling onto those from pretty high up. And so when those are not in good shape, we need to replace them. And those are incredibly expensive. And so just getting line of sight on what does track and field cost at a comprehensive high school? And if we know that, how much of that can the district fund? Where do we have gaps? And then how do we collectively approach the community? There were some great conversations between coaches around, well, once we see that gap, then all the coaches from all the high schools could get together and fundraise together for those gaps instead of this school doing it and this school doing it. And so there's already kind of interest in banding together and not having to go out and create this competition, which was really exciting to hear. Let's see. I don't even know, I'm probably way past my 10 minutes, so I'm gonna pick it up a little bit. So timeline-wise, between last month and the end of the school year moving into July, what we're hoping to do, if we can get that board policy, that will really give us those guardrails to then be able to articulate underneath that, what is the administrative policy, administrative regs, procedures, forms, documents that sort of all line up to your direction on this topic. That will take a pretty substantial amount of work, and we have a lot of community interest in reviewing those documents, providing feedback on them, some Student Voice Council interest in helping actually draft some of those documents with us, which is great experience for their leadership, and bringing those back through the board for your line of sight and ongoing conversation. Moving into summer and fall of this next year, starting that like committee development, transparency, the conversations around how do we communicate our priority areas to the community, doing some training with relevant folks. And this starts to be an opportunity to engage a little more I don't know, directly or strengthen the relationship with some of our 501c3s, our PTAs and our booster clubs where, sometimes they feel like they're out doing their own thing and sometimes that works great. And sometimes I think on either side, we wish there was a better partnership or stronger communication. I think our schools have great relationships with their boosters and PTAs, but I've heard from some of those leaders, like it sure would be nice to just have a little more update on some of the policies and things that impact us, or have a little more frequent touch point with the district around volunteering and this type of leadership that we're engaged in on behalf of students. So hopefully moving into that this fall. And then over the next couple of years, that development of standards. What should every kindergarten kid experience as far as field trips? What does every CTE program, automotive program, if any school had automotive program, what does that entail? What should be in place? Robotics, what does a standard robotics experience look like? Not that we would take the individual cultures out of schools, to say band or music programs at any high school. We don't want them to look identical. There's some really neat cultural differences between our high schools, but for them to know as a baseline, coming in as a band teacher, you can expect this support from the district. You can expect you're going to need to fundraise for X and Y and Z. And if you want to go beyond that, here's some procedures for do we want to ask the community for that kind of money? Is that what our district wants to be out asking for? Let's see. I think that sort of gets us to, in as quick of a nutshell as I can do, this process. I guess I would just say, I think I mentioned at the beginning, I anticipate that this set of policies, which actually has tentacles into many policies in our system, but the ones more directly related to fundraising, these are going to be under revision, I think, in a cycle for probably several years as we try this out, next year revisit and realize, we should probably tweak some things, or maybe we got this part wrong. And so I don't think it's what you're hopefully looking at as far as the board policy to adopt tonight, like this is it forevermore. As we develop the APs and the ARs underneath, if we need to come back and revise any pieces of this, I think that's part of this community engagement. I think there's a lot of interest in those. It wasn't just a one-time listening session. There's interest in partnership around this from many of our community groups. So I just want to remind you, there's a couple handouts in your packet that have a little more direct feedback around the process to date and the proposed direction that we're looking at heading, if you're curious about like, how is this landing with people? And again, just, you know, it is about money and policies and regulations, but it really is also about developing a model of community caring for kids and making sure that that experience that kids are having is relatively equitable across schools. And it's, again, like I said, it's also about our staff, making sure that our staff feel supported in their jobs and that our community knows we have a plan. We're not just out there begging for money, helter-skelter. We want to engage in a way that's efficient, transparent, and that builds trust.
All right, awesome.
So,
questions? Student Voice Council, any questions? No. Directors, questions?
I have a number of questions, but they're all about the proposed policy. Is now the time to ask those questions, or do we put the policy motion on the floor and then we talk about it?
So I think we can move right in then if you don't have any questions about this, because the next part is Kinsey talking about board policy updates.
I think we need to put this policy in our regular cycle where we can, I think we can propose it, but we can get it out to the public and get some more feedback. Even though Kinsey's done just an exceptional job of including everybody who might be impacted possibly by the fundraising activities. But I still think in our regular policy cycle, so in our regular policy cycle for review, and we usually do it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that.
It did go out for full public review after the last board meeting, and no feedback was received.
Yeah, it's in the board packet and it's pretty consistent. The concerns were very consistent, actually.
Yes,
And
they
so
were.
I think that's what we're trying to say is we would like the opportunity to address those concerns. We can either do that tonight and wordsmith in public, or we can have a work session in which we talk about the language.
I would recommend we not wordsmith tonight, since we're almost at 8 o'clock and we have several large action items still to take. So it is what I'm hearing, that we do not want to approve this tonight and we want to table it for a further work session.
I think that sounds appropriate.
Okay. All right. Well, then we are not approving this tonight. Okay, so does someone want to make a motion to table this?
Yeah, I move to table the conversation about board policy KMCBP until a future work session.
Second.
All right, Director Lynch made the motion and Director Chadwick seconded. Any conversations before a vote? Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you. All right. So I believe now we're moving to ed tech, right? Okay, perfect. So I have an opening statement I want to read about the why behind this. In June of 2024, we received a letter from 135 healthcare providers in this community urging us to take action on screen use in our schools. They cited research showing addictive technology can impact children's mental and physical health and negatively impact academic performance. At that time, the district presented some possible changes for the 24-25 school year, including limiting device in K2, removing access to YouTube content on student devices at the elementary and middle school level, widespread rollout of JAMF, and forming a Ben Lapine digital work group to allow further conversations about our digital learning platform. The board had concerns regarding how long students were on screens, what the expectations were in terms of time, how much time was actually spent on dynamic learning versus YouTube, and gaming websites, how iPads affect student behavior, and the board wanted teacher, student, and parent voice included in this conversation. At that meeting, when asked her perspective, our Student Voice Council member stated this: "It's inconsistent with our teachers on how they use iPads. It's inconsistent and ineffective if this is what we've been talking about for a while. It's a blocker. When it's not used exactly as the tool that we need it to be, you just can't do that with the internet. Technology is a very useful tool, therefore a very strong tool. To make it exactly what we need to be for students, we would not call it an iPad. We should remove the blockage and restore the teacher-student relationship that I have with 1 or 2 of my 7 teachers, the ones I truly respect because they've used it as a tool. In high school, may I add, not in elementary school, where their brains are just, elementary kids can't focus on an iPad unless there's a game, unless they have that same feeling they get from playing on the playground. It's ineffective in my opinion, end quote. Some of the district's suggestions for the 25-24 school year kind of happened. Most did not, and we hear again they may be in consideration for the 26-27 school year. We recently received a letter signed by more than 1,100 parents within our community, urging action again. This is not an issue unique to Ben Lapine schools. This is playing out internationally with entire countries rolling back ed tech and kicking screens out of their classrooms. It is playing out in state houses here over children's physical and mental health, over privacy concerns, the amount of screen time in schools, limiting digital distractions, and on and on. As a board, we have an obligation to take action, and we are empowered to do so by EL 4.7, which states technology use must be evidence-based. Evidence-based is not a term that is debatable. It is well understood in the scientific community to mean decisions and practices which are supported by high-quality research, data, and expert analysis. This ensures that what we do is supported by high-quality research, data, This ensures that what we do is effective and has proven outcomes. When we discuss how technology is used, we must use a rigorous, evidence-based framework, as technology does not just impact education, but also, I would argue, the lifelong health and well-being of our students. This goes directly to our board goals of academic excellence, wellness, inclusion, and belonging. I also want to point out that the ed tech is an industry worth approximately $165 billion. 2 groups that inform school districts and are referenced by ours include the International Society for Technology and Education, ISTE, and the Consortium for School Networking, COSIN. These aren't neutral organizations. ISTE is funded by Google, Microsoft, the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation, Hewlett-Packard, among others. COSIN has corporate sponsors including Clever, Magic School, Google for Education, Microsoft, and more. I firmly believe when talking about an issue like educational technology, we must remain free from industry bias, and we must demand tools that are rigorously studied and have research to back them up. Recent reports from both the Brookings Institute as well as Stanford's AI Hub for Education have concluded at this time the evidence base for using AI in education remains, quote, extremely limited, yet we have Magic School on student-facing devices. Magic School, which is a main sponsor of COSIN. We do not let Nestle and Nabisco inform what foods nutrition services puts before our students, and I do not think we should let the tech industry choose what products we put before our students either. I also do want to point out positives for tech use in our schools, because when used well and were supported by evidence, it can be truly transformational. There is so much literature on the positives of educational technology in allowing many of our students to access parts of their education that might not otherwise be available to them. How our counselors, classroom teachers, and SPED and ELL leaders deploy technology to help our students is exactly what we should be doing to improve student outcomes. It is evidence-based and impactful, and we need to continue to invest in these tools. This board and this community has now been waiting over 2 years for action on ed tech. I think the wait needs to end now. We need an actionable plan. With a report on EL 4.7 coming next month, the board action I hope we take tonight can help guide that work. I hope we engage stakeholders in a meaningful way. I hope we listen to teacher, student, and parent voice in this conversation. When elementary reading proficiency scores have dropped for the past 6 years in Ben Lapine schools, we must ask for data on efficacy before we continue further investment in ed tech apps. We cannot risk the harms that come with unfettered tech access, nor can we stand to watch enrollment decrease because families are choosing an alternative to a screen-saturated education. I think we must act now. So now I will read the resolution as written. So resolution number 2013, educational technology. Whereas Ben Lapine Schools strives to provide a top-tier education to prepare every student to be future-ready with a passion, purpose, and plan for the rapidly evolving world. Whereas Ben Lapine Schools believes teachers are the experts in teaching our students, not educational technology companies, nor non-teacher-led applications or automated systems. Whereas Ben Lapine Schools believes in using an evidence-based framework for all decisions around educational practice to ensure we use research-proven strategies to help students reach their highest levels of achievement and well-being. Whereas Ben Lapine Schools acknowledges screen use can support learning under specific circumstances, while also acknowledging ample research exists to show excessive screen use is associated with worsening executive function, academic performance, health issues, including obesity, sleep disorders, depression, anxiety, attention disorders, vision issues, back and neck issues. Whereas Ben Lapine Schools is concerned with the unknown impacts of AI in education, human relationships, and brain development, and acknowledges the January 2026 Brookings Institute report on AI in education, which concluded the risks of using generative AI in education currently outweigh the benefits. Whereas Ben Lapine Schools acknowledges educational technology can be transformative, while also acknowledging misuse of devices disrupts education and the classroom environment. Whereas Ben Lapine Schools acknowledges technology plays an important role in assisting many students with special needs in accessing areas of their education that might otherwise be inaccessible. Whereas Ben Lapine Schools seeks to provide differentiated education for diverse learners with varied educational needs. Whereas Ben Lapine Schools must be a responsible steward of our limited financial resources and is concerned regarding growing technology and digital curriculum costs. Now, therefore, be it resolved, we, the Board of Directors for Ben Lapine Schools, direct the superintendent to institute with fidelity and accountability and make public current policy, procedures, and any documents that provide guidance to staff and students regarding technology use in the classroom. Further resolved further, the district shall engage in a review of all technology, websites, and applications currently being used to ensure they are in compliance with EL 4.7 on technology. Resolved further, the district shall develop standards of use for educational technology at different grade bands, K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12, including a list of educational technology applications approved for use at each grade band. Resolved further, the district shall ensure screen use is limited to defined curricular and educational purposes only. Resolved further, non-evidence-based technology and applications will be removed from student-facing devices. Resolved further, the district shall work to increase and promote reading and writing that is non-screen based to the greatest extent possible. Resolved further, the district shall continue to study and use technology for adaptive purposes to best serve students with an identified need for which technology is appropriate and evidence-based to improve learning outcomes. Resolved further, the district shall report to the board what systems currently exist to monitor screen time use. Resolved further, the district shall report to the board the most commonly used applications and websites by students. Resolved further, the district shall maximize use of JAMP or similar technology to ensure screen use is appropriate, teacher-led, and for educational purposes only. Resolved further, the district shall consider performance-based contracts with all educational technology vendors to force accountability for the efficacy of their products. Resolved further, the district shall provide the board data on the costs of non-digital versus digital curriculum, the cost of hardware, software, and training for all technology implementations, and other associated costs of digital versus non-digital materials annually as part of the budget process. So now that I have read it, I'm also acting as board chair, so I'm going off of this. So I'm going to thank myself, and I will now entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2013.
I move to approve Resolution 2013 as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have some concerns about some of this, and I'm not sure what or how to go about this, of having a discussion. And there are some things in here I'm just not certain how realistic this is. And I also am a little concerned where we start off with acknowledging the expertise of our educators, and then we move through a lot of constrictions. And some of this I think is very warranted. But I just, for example, a review of technology, websites, and apps, I don't know how realistic that is.
Well, I say that, Cameron, because they actually did at one of our ed tech stakeholder groups present us the most used websites, and we have never been presented that as a board. And so like YouTube is the #1 most used website in our district.
So is there a possibility that we could request in our next ed tech presentation some of these key areas to really dig into? I mean, I get concerned about having a resolution and not having the wherewithal or the infrastructure to be able to follow through. I mean, there's a lot here, and so I'm just wondering Yeah.
Just a reminder, the motion on the floor is to vote to approve the resolution as presented. So
As
discussion can continue, but that's the vote that needs to be taken.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
so we can make a motion to approve it as presented.
So
We
the
have a-
motion has
Yep.
already been made.
Okay,
Yes.
so
Now we're voting.
I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, so it passes four in favor, one opposed.
So,
All right, and now we're going to add Mountain Meadow, no?
Can I ask a question?
11A, okay.
So, in terms of, how to pay for all this, like, what is the next step in that?
Are you talking about how to pay for this?
For the,
Do you mean implement?
yeah,
So I want to say that when I wrote this, this is all stuff that they have, like we're asking for stuff that they have potentially. I tried to make this very clear that it was not asking for a new investment in technology because I know we don't have the money for that.
Right.
So the way I wrote it was tell us the information you have now. Because we've been asking for this information for 2
yeah,
years
I
and
get it,
we
I get
haven't
it,
gotten
I get it. Yeah, no, I'm
But
just
also, I don't know if you saw the email I sent earlier asking about the cost of Lexia and Dreambox
Yeah.
and the cost going up. And we have about 8,000 elementary kids, right? Yep, because that means Lexia and Dreambox are gonna cost us about $600,000 next year.
Yeah.
So is that an investment we should be making?
Yeah. Dr. Burke, did you want to add anything?
I think, I'll add a couple of things. I think this resolution is something, frankly, the content of this resolution is something that we're very much on board with. Like, all of these things, I think we can make happen. I think, our community is interested in, and I think we've been, this maybe helps us, like, things that we've circled the plane on, we can, like, land. I think the things that stand out for me related to this are really what I had put at the dais for all of you to just consider is not the content of this resolution. Again, the district is fully on board, and we think that we can land. So, like, those concerns where you feel like, I don't know if this is actually doable, I do think these things are doable. The one thing that I had put there in front of you was really around the language related to your Carver model of governance to consider, not changing the content, but maybe considering some of those wordings. Now, granted, the motion which passed is as written. And so that's something for you as a board, you'll need to kind of grapple with of just where does this live, maybe bleed into operational things, and where does it land in more of the governance piece? And I think that's just important moving forward and to consider. But in terms of delivering on this content, like I hear from Amy, there's some very interest in urgency around the May, like having the report that happens in May to have the things that you're most interested in hearing about. And that seems that it's been missing. So I don't know if that helps any of these pieces, but I don't think that the content of this has us really feeling any one way, except like, great, like we can, handle those things. I want to make clear that the presentation that we're able to deliver to you in May can speak to maybe the on-ramp that it might take for implementation, that type of stuff, but that we can have some specificity there. And then for you, again, as a board, to just kind of keep in that mindset of, because of this Carver governance, where might future things cause you to think like, oh, maybe we need to live in this space differently. But the content is not of concern.
But there's some clear areas where we're basically directing, on the operation side, we're directing how to do your expertise. And
that's true.
Or, I think and that's where I think it's a little delicate of supporting that expertise. But, and also, I respectfully I can't imagine a teacher, every single teacher is going to be reporting every single website they use for review.
No, not teachers. The district has that data. That's what is meant. So the district has data on kind of the most used websites because they gave it to us in the EdTech group. We have never gotten that as a board.
Okay.
If that clarifies kind of what that means. It's not a burden on teachers to do that. None of this is like direct teacher burden, other than, you know, maybe instituting JAMF, which is one of the reasons that I had reviewed this with Deputy Superintendent and said, let's make sure there's nothing in here that is a bargaining issue or that oversteps that. And, you know, talking about the Carver model, yes, and we do a modified Carver, so let's remember that. And if we've been waiting 2 years for action and there has been no action, then I think directing is appropriate, because our only other option if we're following a true Carver model is to fire the superintendent, which is certainly not what I think we should do every time we have a disagreement or something doesn't happen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, respectfully, I would say there are probably some other avenues within that that wouldn't cause us to jump to that space, but I understand your sentiment. I do think, Cameron, one of the things that you stated was in regard to, like maybe at our next stakeholder engagement or work session, we see those. I really believe that because of what is outlined in 4.7, the obligation to present this is to this board. While it may be nice to present it in these other spaces, the board needs to hear these things that are germane to, you know, sort of tying the bow on 4.7. And it sounds like maybe I don't remember the way in which 4.7 was presented in the past, but it clearly was missing some of the information that is most of interest to this board. I think the one thing that we may need to consider after this is that by passing this resolution, what does this cause related to EL 4.7, which is just adopted by this board as written in October. So if we need to amend things in a certain way, that's something for perhaps at a work session, this board can consider those pieces.
Great point, thank you.
All right, and now we're going to move on to, is it 11? 11A. Okay, and we're gonna do Mountain Meadow after that. Okay, great. All right, perfect. So now we're gonna move into Agenda 11A. Earlier this evening during executive session, the board had an opportunity to review appeals on 2 complaints that were filed with the district. Now is the time for the board to decide in open session which action, if any, is warranted. I will now entertain a motion regarding the complaint received on March 5th, 2026. Do we have a motion?
In regard to the appeal received on March 5th, 2026, I move that the board, I move that the board hear the appeal.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so Director Fisher has made the motion and Director Chadwick has seconded. Any discussion? Okay, so hearing no discussion, we'll take a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, 4 in favor, 1 opposed, motion passes. And now I will entertain a motion regarding the complaint received on March 6th, 2026.
In regard to the appeal received March 6, 2026, I move that the board hear the appeal.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we'll move for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed. It passes, 3 in favor, 2 opposed. All right. All right, and I don't need to read that last part since, Janet, you will be scheduling hearings, correct? Okay, perfect. now 11B, Mountain Meadow Lodge, Laurel Lodge. All right, sorry, it's not in here, so I don't have any of the information. I think we had some questions, and I think city is here, representatives to answer. Is that correct? Yeah. You know, I had some questions that were left here for me to ask you that aren't my questions. Yeah, feel free to come up.
Does Paul want to, wasn't he going to present?
I don't know if Paul was, Paul, are you planning on presenting?
I don't have anything to add other than the executive summary
That you gave to us?
had, so as long
Yeah.
as there's no clarifications on that, I'm happy just letting that stand as our record.
Okay, okay, perfect. One of my questions was, this is a TIF renewal, correct?
No, it's a qualified rental housing property tax
Okay, so this was
exemption.
never a TIF? Okay, because I believe our executive summary said it would be a precedent to pass it.
We need to have them introduce themselves, please.
Oh, sorry, introduce
to do
yourself,
so.
sorry. I've met you both before, so I'm just going.
I'm Rachel Baker, the Housing Division Manager for the City of Bend.
I'm Carrie Bell, the Housing Production and Incentives Coordinator.
Okay.
Can you say that one more time?
Carrie Bell, the Housing Production and Incentives Coordinator for the City of Bend.
Thank you.
Okay, so this was never a TIF?
No.
Okay, but it was the first housing voucher or tax abatement that you gave? Because there was something in the packet about it being like new, and it was the first renewal, and it would be precedent setting if we voted for it.
When you say in your packet, is that from your staff member?
Mhm.
Okay.
So maybe we did not get the best information, I'm not sure.
It'd be tough to speak to that without seeing what you received, but this is the qualified rental housing property tax exemption that the City of Bend basically enacted early 2000s. And it represents the first time that the school district and the city partnered with providing affordable housing through this tax exemption. And since then, we have shared in passing probably about 8 of them. So it's been around for some time, and this one specifically was passed about 20 years ago. So this is the first time that we're seeing one being renewed. So that would be accurate, and that would align with whatever maybe is being referenced in your packet.
Okay, so we have 8 currently in the community that we have given tax exemptions to.
Roughly. Without being prepared for that, that's what I would say about
Yeah, no,
8.
because there were some
Yeah.
questions on our end of like, how many of these are out there? Why
Yeah,
are we renewing
and to give you an idea,
these?
Mountain Laurel Lodge was the very first. Discovery Park Lodge was adopted about a year later, so that would be coming to you in the next year or so as well. That was also senior housing. And then from there, it jumps a few years. We didn't see any for a couple years, and then we had a few more trickle in over the last 10 years, I'd say.
Okay. The website for Mountain Laurel Lodge, sorry, I just want to say Meadow every time, said that it's qualified as affordable housing for 60 years.
So that's the agreement they would get for state funding, is that there's a 60-year commitment.
Uh-huh.
What that means, though, and the difference between the property tax exemption and that funding from the state, is that the property tax exemption under state statute and city ordinance has to be directly applied to the rent. So the savings they receive in that property tax exemption goes directly to the tenants in rental saving. And so if that goes away, the tenant's rent will increase. And it can increase to the highest amount. It's still affordable, but they're getting a discount because of the property tax exemption that currently exists as tenants, and they will continue to get that discount if you extend that property tax exemption.
Does the owner of the building otherwise raise rent? Because you said they can raise it even without the property tax exemption?
Correct. They are here if you would like to speak or listen to them specifically. Rima Wilson is with the
Yeah, I think that would be
organization.
super helpful.
Yeah, because they could better speak to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rima Wilson. I'm representing Pacific Crest Affordable Housing, and we do raise rents. A project wouldn't survive very long if we didn't raise rents, but it's all within a threshold that's allowed by the state and by federal, HUD definition of what affordable is.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we were just, hearing that we're kicking seniors out of housing, which doesn't really feel great, given that the website says it is affordable for 60 years. So that narrative in the community, I think, is kind of damaging. And one of my colleagues wanted me to ask that they were told that the developers never visited the city or the county first for this vote. I'm reading someone else's messages, so I don't want that to be inflammatory. But that was a concern, and also rumors that you're coming to the board because you just think the school boards are an easy rubber stamp. I also don't know how you feel about that, but those were questions I was told to ask.
So both the, sorry, very frustrating with that narrative.
Yeah, no,
The county heard this and approved, as did the High Desert School,
High Desert ESD.
High Desert ESD.
Okay.
So you are not the first taxing district to hear this.
Okay.
And the city will hear it tomorrow night.
Okay.
And just to be clear, we're talking $1,000 a year roughly for us. And without our approval, these 54 to 60 seniors living there at this point, mostly on SSI or disability, will likely either potentially have to deal with raised rents or be displaced, or have to shift their finances in one way or another to be able to continue to live there if we are not approving this. Is that accurate?
Yes, because the requirements of the property tax exemption are that the savings is passed dollar for dollar to the tenant. That's what Rachel was explaining, is that without this property tax exemption, that the loss of that will also be passed to the tenant. And Rima's here to represent the ownership, and I know that the gentleman, John Gilbert with Pacific Crest, who spoke at the county, shared numbers, and without being fully prepared, I don't think any of us have those numbers, but he called out on public record that it was $35, and there was some other analysis we've heard between $35 and $65 a month. So I don't know if you have more to share on that, but that's what we have understood and that we'll be presenting to the council tomorrow.
One difference is that the city can still approve their portion of property tax exemptions. It's only that with 51% of the taxing districts would the entire property tax exemption be eligible.
And it's one or the other. We've just been getting quite a few questions from our council on that. So it's either 51% approve and you get the full exemption, or it's a partial exemption of only the cities. It wouldn't be the city and the county and High Desert ESD. Yeah.
Is
And
there
oh, go
anything that mandates that the increased cost, like let's say this tax exemption fails, and is there anything that says, by statute that those costs have to be passed along to the tenant, or that's a choice on the part of the property owner to pass those increased costs along to the tenants?
And I might let Rima speak more to this, but there are investors into the affordable housing development, and they are getting the benefit of that discount. And so it affects the investment, and the rents would have to be raised to meet that investment because you're creating a cost that didn't exist for them before.
Yeah, I would say that explains it, yeah.
Oh, thanks, I did good. Because this is a property tax that has never been implemented on this building before.
Do you raise the rent yearly regardless, a different amount than the property tax exemption? Like, how often do you raise rents on your tenants currently?
It hasn't been every year, but typically it would be every year on most projects. The amount that we're allowed to go up is dictated by HUD.
How much do you generally go up if they're paying $800 a month and this property tax exemption would give $30 more approximately that they would be paying? How much do you raise the rent each month on your tenants every year?
That's not a question I can answer. I don't have that information. If John were here, he could answer that.
And again, it is typically dictated at a level that's not necessarily by the investors. It's more federal, state funding that determines that.
And these rents are, I wish I had the numbers in front of me, something like 30% lower than they have to be. I mean, there's lower than market rate, but we're also considerably lower than they have to be. So, you know, we try to minimize it as much as we can.
I don't know where we are in this discussion process, but when we think about the population who has the fastest growing homelessness, it's our seniors. And there isn't a lot of affordable senior housing in Bend. And I feel like we have a responsibility as the largest taxing district to do our part. And there's a good chance these have been former employees of our school districts or our partner agencies, grandparents, potentially close family members. And I think it's really important that we take the initiative and do our part for our community and our community members and our partner entities to approve this exemption.
I move that the Board of Directors of Ben Lopine Schools approve the request for a property tax exemption for the Mountain Laurel Lodge.
Second.
All right, so Director Lynch has made the motion. Director Fisher has seconded. Any discussion before I call for a vote? Hearing no discussion.
Yes, I would like to have some
Okay.
discussion.
Surely
from you.
discuss.
I respect and honor your sentiment and your statements. But I am seeing a precedent setting. We know that some of the other properties that we have accepted on the tax exemption, the Jack Straw development, the development right across from Caldera High School, we've been making those decisions. At the time, we were not $7.1 million in the hole for next year. Fiscally responsible, it seems to me that we cannot continue to either address new requests or renewals. We had, when we were making those decisions earlier in the last 2 years, nobody said anything about renewals. So we were looking at 20 years, bam, that's it. So now we have a different animal. We have a little bit different situation. And while I am very concerned about the actual implication or for those individual residents, I feel fiscally responsible that we just cannot continue to do this. And so I would deny that request. So as we vote, you will understand why.
I was just gonna say, in terms of like the various districts, like voting on, different properties like this or different programs like this, is there any alternative or is it just yeah?
Are you referring to the process of how we get here and who votes and how we get to 51% and the timeline?
Is there an alternative to that?
No,
Yeah.
we,
So it's just a crappy.
yeah, it's a final, it requires a final action from council within 60 days. And the way we've traditionally done it is to honor the smaller districts, give them an opportunity to hear it publicly if they so choose. And the larger districts, yourselves and us, the city of Bend, our council, going last. So that would help speak to kind of the process of how we get here.
And it's state statute that sets that 60-day deadline. It's not a city ordinance.
And I appreciate your thoughts, Shirley, and the fiscal responsibility. Having lived here 20 plus years ago when this was built, nobody could have possibly foreseen the boom in influx of people who could buy a median house price of 830 plus or whatever it is at this point. Nobody could have foreseen a pandemic, and what happened with remote workers moving here and rent increases. It's just, I'd like to say anybody who builds something and has a 20-year that it's a done deal, but that's just not the way our community is able to sustain itself at this point, with lack of affordability and housing prices, et cetera. And I also think we really need to rely on our partners, and going forward, we have had some pretty significant, excellent partnerships that serve our students, families, and employees. And I also hope to think that we are all responsible enough to look at every single request individually, as opposed to the anxiety of potentially are we setting a precedent, but we have the responsibility, and I think we have the astuteness to be able to look at every individual request individually. And I still stand by how critical it is to support our seniors, some of our most vulnerable. And one of our core values as a board is supporting our vulnerable populations, not just our students' families, but our community members. And we need partners. We need people to be on our side in the coming years as we navigate hard times and potentially a levy.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I want to make sure that, I do want to know like how much you raise rents on your tenants a year. Because, we get emails that we are the big bag boogeymen who are kicking seniors out of their housing when that is 100% not the case. I am totally sympathetic to, $30 a month out of someone who's living on SSI is choosing medication, is choosing a bag of groceries. And not even a bag of groceries at this point when bread is $8 a loaf and peanut butter is $5 or $6. Like, it's choosing 4 grocery items at this point for $30. So I'm totally sympathetic to that argument. And as these projects come to us, I think as a board, we need to discuss what our values are and make sure that there is very clear requirements in place so that we're not giving something away that we shouldn't be giving away, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I think that going through this discussion has brought questions like that to light that we would ask for future considerations when something like this is presented to us again.
Yeah, I think we all feel burned by Jack Straw, quite honestly. Like, we never want to be in a position where we vote for something like that again. And so the threshold for affordable housing coming to us is going to be a high bar. Knowing now that this isn't a TIF renewal, I am more inclined to support it, but also with accountability going forward. And if, people are coming to us that we're the big bad boogeymen when, I'm sorry, your developer's raising your rent. They have a choice. They raise it every year, just maybe not $30 a month, but now that $30 is on the school board and we're evil if we do it. I don't like that narrative in the community. And I want to make sure that doesn't happen because it's not fair to us when, as a developer, you do have a choice too.
Yeah, and I'm curious when the next project does come to us, that we could partner with the city and potentially have a work session or, just some.
It's been something that Marcus and I have talked about because we have bi-monthly meetings with the city leaders, that's a conversation we need to be having.
Great.
And setting thresholds and foundations of what we will approve and what should be brought to us and what should not be brought to us.
Great.
The city was interested in being here, right? But I think that's the concern here for me is that it was directed not to be on this agenda by leadership. And we could have, had we initially said yes, the city would be here to kind of dig deep and be prepared to answer some of these concerns. Because these are valid concerns, and I too feel your sentiment about the Jack Straw. And this is $1,000 a year for our senior neighbors.
We're spending $600,000 next year on Lexia and Dreambox. So yes. All right.
Call for the
I
vote.
will call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, it passes 4-1. All right, and now my computer is trying to install an update. So with that, I'm going to move to the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for being here.
All right. So my superintendent's report at, whatever it is, 8:30. So a couple of things that I just want to update everybody on is Thursday, April 30th, 5 to 7 at Caldera is the Life and Career Readiness Night. So I encourage you to go. They've got all kinds of things that are just like fascinating and fun and odd and everything. So I encourage you to go and just explore what our students have before them in terms of choices. I wanted to just give some props to our local robotics teams that have performed so well recently. Mountain View High School performed really well at the district championships, as did Summit. Summit so much so that they are headed to Worlds in Houston, so very cool. I had the pleasure of going to LCA for a tour and kind of an info session that's related to just getting more information into our community about our support systems and what exists for our families. And, they are always looking for volunteers. Obviously, money is really nice, but also volunteers, and you don't need to be a Spanish speaker. They just need people all the time, and it's a lovely organization that if you're interested in, please stop by. I wanted to give some props to our communications team and our tech team that have been working for many, many months, and they are about to have our websites go live into next week. So that's very exciting. We will be at blschools.org will be our kind of last portion of those websites. So more coming soon. We'll have more information about that, but they look beautiful, and it's been a ton of hard work. So great work, everybody. And then just, we're excited about the ed tech work. And like I said, kind of landing the plane on some things that have been in thought for a while. And I feel like a big portion of this, I would like to hear a lot more teacher voice related to the implementation of some of this work, because there's all kinds of us commenting on their 6 hours a day that I want to make sure that they're deeply involved in that implementation. So that is my superintendent report for tonight.
All right, we will now open the floor for board comment. Director Olson.
No comments at this time.
Director Lynch.
I have a few things. I want to express my appreciation to Kinsey and the policy team for all the work so far on the fundraising policy and the attempt to land that plane. Just as the superintendent just mentioned, Summit's robotics team making it to Worlds. 12 hours later, they send a $6,000 invoice to compete at Worlds. So this is real and happening in all of our buildings all the time. It's extremely challenging, and I want the community to know that we're taking their unending efforts to keep our programs afloat and high quality, and all the hours that so many parents and community members put into our schools. We're taking it very seriously and really honor that work and their efforts to keep our kids having a high fidelity program in everything that they do, whether it's academics or athletics. And then as a second comment, I want to encourage as we, as all of our schools make their plans for the next school year, now is a time that a lot of our buildings are thinking about schedules and thinking about, the challenge of our ever increasing state mandated curriculum requirements. They just seem like they never end, the list of things that we are required to do. And it's my hope that we will work hard as a team, your school board, your budget committee, and your administration in making sure that we keep space for some of the non-mandated curricular items that so many of our students find passion, purpose, and plan for the future in. And by those, I mean our electives, whether those are CTE or world languages or the performing arts. Those electives, while they don't flow as neatly from state mandates, play a huge role in making sure that our students feel like they belong and that they have a passion in coming to school. And I hope that we will keep those high on our priority list as we head into a challenging budget and scheduling season.
I too also want to echo kudos to the tech for getting those websites up, super exciting, and for Kinsey and her team navigating a challenging area with regard to fundraising. Also, great appreciation for Stephen and Katie, who coming up here again to hear thoughts, and it's something we all, or I feel quite passionate about, and I just appreciate them continuing to show up and hear us and our students, student representatives. And also, I need to always shout out our community members who show up for public comment and send letters and want to be heard. And I think we really, I'll speak for myself, I'm really trying to hear what our constituents are saying, and I think that's a responsibility. And I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
I do not have comment, but I have comment Marcus left for me to read, so I'm going to be Marcus Legrand and read his comment. This past weekend, Marcus had the pleasure of attending the NSBA conference in San Antonio. What he appreciated the most about the committee's responsiveness to its members. The workshops were not only insightful, but also provided districts with real-life scenarios to help navigate the upcoming changes in education. Here is a summary of the sessions that Marcus attended. He also obtained copies of the presentation for your review. Breaking the burnout cycle, supporting educator mental health, keeping great people in education. A personal favorite. Dr. Brown did a masterful job identifying the primary causes of teacher burnout. A strong superintendent board team, your path to effective board governance, pre-conference workshop. Building bridges, closing gaps, a data-driven strategy for at-risk youth. Include a discussion on defining targets for the Wellness Center. Using policy to promote board values, strategic planning that actually works. SVC coordinators. You will love hearing about the student from an Arizona middle school who has been in their program for 12 years. Additional information to follow. The highlight of the conference was keynote speaker Zach Cass, former head of go-to-market for OpenAI. His presentation on the age of artificial intelligence, its advantages, disadvantages, and implications for education was exceptional. Most compelling were these data points. 85% of jobs that will exist in 2030 do not exist today, and 70% of skill sets used in most jobs will change. As educators, we must prepare skills with the students with the skills they need, including AI literacy, conflict management, adaptability, process efficiency, innovative thinking, public speaking, budget and resource management, risk assessment, communication, and collaboration. This raises an important question. How do we adjust education to meet students where they are in an environment that is student-centered and relationship-driven? Marcus will leave you with this. If you had a blank canvas, what would the portrait of a graduate from our district look like? Are they tech savvy? Do they have good character? Are they equipped with career-ready skills, poised collaborators, thoughtful problem solvers, and strong communicators? That's for us to decide. Let's keep pushing. All right, so now that I have been Marcus, our next meeting is a work session scheduled for April 28th, and our next regular business meeting is scheduled for May 12th. Sorry, I'm mumbling because it's 9 o'clock. With that, our meeting is adjourned.